Hello, 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 everyone. This is Helen Higginbotham, Miss Higgy, coming at you again on another Sunday with When Black Women Gather. Thank you so much for coming to join us. Somebody needs a mute already. I can hear. Who is that? Please mute your phones. So we are gathered again this Sunday, and this Sunday is going to be a unique Sunday because we're going to talk politics, one of those subjects that we tend to shy away from, but it's important that we talk about what's happening now. We've got some elections coming up, so we need to start just thinking and being engaged. And so today's program is simply called Black Women Talking Politics. And we're going to hit on 3 subjects today, which I share with you in the link in the email that I sent you. And the first one is, we may not do them in this order, but voter suppression in the blue districts. What does it look like? We know what it looks like in red districts, the Republican Party, but what's happening with Democrats around voter suppression, and what does it look like? So we're going to talk about that, and I hope you all have some ideas, because, Linda and I certainly have some. Linda's going to be co-chairing, co-facilitating this conversation with me. You all know Linda Carter. She's an attorney and a professor, retired professor from Essex County. And we're going to talk about Ukraine and Black folks. How are we dealing? What are we thinking about Ukraine? What does Ukraine mean to us as a community? What do we think about the billions of dollars that are being given in support to Ukraine? Should we? What do we think as Black women? And then the last section that we thought we would talk about is this whole thing with Joe Biden and the forever ongoing promise for forgiveness of student loans. And there's so much controversy around that. Should they be forgiven? To whom and how? And, kind of like reparations, there's something when you want to give money back to the little guy, there's always some hesitance, but when you want to give it to corporate America, never a problem. Plenty of money. It's not called handout or any of that stuff. So let's talk about that. So as usual, our conversations are guaranteed to be respectful. We don't allow anything other than that. You do not have to share the same views. All views are welcome here, particularly when we're talking politics. And the only thing that we ask is that we're all respectful. Say what you want to say. If you're thinking that you shouldn't say it, I'm not going to say it, don't say it. I'm going to say, think about how you can say it in a way that the message that you're trying to convey will be heard. It's very easy to offend. We're not here to offend one another. We want to be heard. So step back, rephrase it, reframe it in your mind, and come on and say it. So we guarantee you respect, but not comfort. We need to push past our comfort level in this conversation and all other conversations like this. So that's the deal. So Linda and I will talk. We'll just start out talking about the different subjects. If you all can just show, or if anybody here, you can just unplug and tell me if you've watched the video already. I sent you a 13-minute video. Has anyone watched it?
I did.
No, I didn't.
Yes. Oops. I watched it.
Play it again.
I watched it.
So I don't know if we want to play it again, but let's just talk about it. And I don't know, Linda, I think that it's kind of hard to tell who watched it and who didn't watch it. It's a 13-minute video. Maybe I can just play at least the part where Linda's talking. And Linda, you can talk about the premise of the video.
Yeah. I was going to say that probably even if we do it in sections, like you can watch my part and then I'll just speak to it. And then Dr. Aquil is on because she has a section, so you can play her part and then she can come in. And then Kookie, who I think really brings it home because she talks about the corruption in the Democratic Party. And she'll be on about 1:45, so we can show her part, and by then she should probably be on. So that way, anybody who hasn't seen it can run to the ladies' room.
So Dr. Aquil, you're saying is here?
Yes, she should be on. She was coming on. So show my part first.
Is she here?
She told me she was coming in.
Okay. All right. So the point is that, Linda, just tell them kind of like the background of what happened and how the video came about to be.
Right. So basically what happened is that Dr. Aquil, as a matter of fact, had come to see me the week before Christmas to ask me if I would be interested in running for office. And having watched Newark politics for a long time, since I was about 9 years old, I basically said, same people, different script, same script, different people, because as time goes on. And she said, well, do you want to talk a little bit more about it, maybe next week? And I talked to her and her son, and I told them, basically that my main thing was I'm on a fixed income, and that I was not interested in putting up any money or putting a lien against my house, because that's basically how they get people, amongst some other things. And I have to say, I had not seen Dr. Aquil in some time. Happened to, I used to walk in Weekway Park, and I met her there. So I hadn't seen her in like maybe 10 years, at least 10 years. So we talked a little bit more. And when I said, I'm not putting any money, and they didn't squinch, I said, okay, let's go for it. So basically, I wasn't as vested in it, but as January 1st, I really was not sure I was going to do it. But on January 3rd, I went to pick up petitions. Picked up the petitions. That's a whole nother story, but picked up petitions, and we have on the 3rd. So we have until the 7th to get in, and we need to get 1,644. But people say always do more because, just in case. And the sad part is they said just in case the incumbents, that was the kind of conversation, just in case the incumbents have some particular control over the municipal clerk, and they throw out some of your petitions, you want to have a backup. Anyway, so basically, I did that. It was a long story about that, how I got to the point, but I turned in 2,000 petitions on the 7th, which was the last day. And that's important because we heard little grumblings in the community about maybe you should have got your stuff in on the 4th, so you'll have a grace period of 7th, but that was not clear. So I turned in my petitions, 2,000, about 2:00 in the afternoon on the 7th. I didn't get a correspondence or in communication from the clerk until the next day around 5:30. I must tell you that we only had to the 10th, which was 3 days after the 7th, in order to get, if there were any changes we were going to make. We had to get in by the 10th. So now we got 3 days between the 7th and the 10th, Monday to Thursday. I get my petitions, I get a email from them about 5:00 Tuesday evening stating that I turned in 2,000 petitions, 1,503 were qualified, and that I needed 141 in order to qualify. So I said, I'm coming in the next day, and I want to see every petition because I want to know whether, why they didn't qualify. So the next day I'm there at 10:00, and they bring this box in, and the gentleman who's civil service, he starts to say how, we have, we do this meeting so we can explain whatever. And he started going into this conversation, and then I stopped him for a minute. I said, wait a minute, this is my first time running. I teach American government, I teach civics, but this is granular, so it's a little different. But I'm saying, you're saying things that should have been on the, they have like a checklist that came with the petitions. And I said, some of the things you're saying should have been on that checklist. Not only should it have been on the checklist, it should have been posted on the door. Better yet, not only posted on the door, there should be a deep instructional DVD so that we're all operating from the same vantage point. And it was no disrespect to them, and I told them this wasn't about you, but I said it appears to me that it's a question of transparency here. And I even told them that there's some rumblings in the neighborhood about amongst people who had taken petitions, whether or not they should have gotten petitions in earlier. And if that was the case, it should have been cleared up. There should be no confusion at this point. And he went on to talk, and then I went to look at the packages, and they had one package and had signatures. And that was interesting because the person who was on the top, and they were going to throw out these signatures. The person on the top was Junius Williams. And if you don't know Junius, he's a civil rights worker, been around Newark for like 50 years. His signature was one in question. Junius is the historian for the city of Newark. So I said, wait a minute, hold on. This is Junius Williams. Don't you know? I mean, I've known Junius for almost 50 years. You don't know his signature, and he's the historian for the city. And it just so happened that Josie Gonzalez, who accompanied me, Josie was the person that got his signature. So Josie's like, what are you saying? I got his signature. What are you saying? So they were going to throw these out. And I found out later on that they realized that if they had gone to court with that, chances are they probably would have lost, because for you not to know in the clerk's office who the historian for the city is and what their signatures were, that's a problem. And then there were 50 other ones. Apparently some other petitions got mixed up in mine. They're for Newark, and this is a nonpartisan election, so it's not Democrat, Republican, but it's primarily Democrat. I had some petitions that were the color, because there's different colors. For the mayor, it was white. Anybody running for the mayor would have white petitions. Anybody running for city, just council person, theirs would be pink. And the position I was running for as council at large, which would represent the whole city, and they were green. So I had found out the night before that there were some other petitions mixed up in my petitions. Of course, they didn't think that they did it on purpose. But I had pulled them out, and when I went to the clerk, I said, I just want to make sure these are going to be accepted because they're all green. There's no reason for me not to think that they weren't petitions for my, the position I'm running for. Anyway, so we have the other stack were people who were considered not registered to vote. 371 people out of my 2,000 were considered not to have been registered to vote. It was interesting because I decided that that would be the group we would try to get registered by the 10th in order to be able to qualify for the ballot. It was interesting because when we went, well, first of all, now and probably in other places, just bear with me regarding the tea kettle, just pretend it's not going on so I can finish my story. So anyway, 371, and we decided we would go and try to get those individuals because the city clerk's office, you could register online. But what happened is, and some of my graduates came to help me, one of the young ladies had texted me back to say the system for the city clerk's office had gone down. That would allow you to, not the city clerk, the county clerk, that would allow you to be able to register on spot, and it went down. She was going to go get some petitions and come back and get the person, but it didn't work out because she had to go to work. But then we found out from other people that the system went down. Then as we approached individuals who said they voted in the governor's race last year, how could they be in a list or in a stack that's not registered to vote? Now that becomes more of a problem because we're going to people and they're upset. They're like, what are you talking about? I actually registered for the governor last November. How could I not be registered to vote? So that, posed a problem. But ultimately, I decided I was going to city clerk because they have an audience, and I'm really a shy person, contrary to what people think. But I had to do this, and I went in, and you guys saw the piece where I talk about, a little bit of my experience, but it wasn't so much about my experience. It appeared to be at minimum a question of transparency, not making sure that everybody has the same information. And the other part for me, living in the city as long and watching what happened historically in the city, particularly, and I said this, Mayor Adonisio, who was involved in corruption, actually was oppressing the Black and Puerto Rican community back in the day. And now to see Black and Puerto Ricans who are the face of interests that really want to control the resources of the city of Newark was really a sad commentary. So it wasn't, I wanted to tell people that it ended up where I was 45 petitions short of getting on the ballot. I just want to make sure I made that point.
So close.
In particular, it was about. In particular, it was really about the fact. Yeah, it was really about the fact that we're doing to ourselves, and we are participating against our own interests, and especially with John Lewis bill. The Democrats are talking about that, but you're engaged in the same kind of voter suppression. And when Kookie comes on, I want her to talk about the corruption because her dad was actually part of the machine. So
let me just say that while Linda's experience is a New Jersey experience, there are people on this call from other parts of the country. So we need to talk about what does voter suppression look like in our own party? For most, I'm assuming that most of us, because we Black folks, are probably Democrats. So, when we talk about the suppression of Republicans suppressing our vote, we know what that looks like. We know, that they're cutting out, voting on Sundays and what was that? Polls to the souls to the poll. They cut that out. Now they're saying that you can't, you gotta have ID to vote. You can't take people water. So we know those very deliberate acts. But when I hear what Linda's describing, I hear suppression in the way that there's some control over who the candidates will be. And I can say here in New Jersey, one of the big problems that I think we have, which I see also as suppression, is that there's never any real election. They decide that, you know, Linda, you've gotten on our bad side, so we want you to step down, or they're just going to get rid of you, or Linda's ready to retire. But they always let the sitting candidate is removed and somebody else is appointed, so that when there's a new election, you don't have a free choice. You have someone who's been in the position who will be recognized as an incumbent, and they definitely have, you know, better real estate in the minds of the voting public, better real estate on the ballot. And that to me is just another means of oppressing or suppressing, I mixed the words up, the vote of the will of the people, just a different kind of way that it's done. Linda, do you feel like that was your experience?
I think it was more the way it's done. It's just, it has the same goal, you know, to be able to control the people who are on the ballot, to make sure, and we'll talk about this later, to discourage people from voting. When you talk about the Newark Board of Elections, you know, just discourage people. But the other part for me, you know, for all intent and purposes, I thought, considering this my first time and I just jumped into this thing and I had nothing, no money, nobody even knew but my husband, who overheard me saying I was going to do this, that 45 petitions short, I didn't do bad. And so, you know, ideally, I'm not going, you know, we were going to do a write-in candidacy, but I think that at this point, you know, I'm not really interested in running again, but I am interested in a council of elders, not around a personality, because I understand in Newark there was a council of elders, but it was around a personality. I think that we have an obligation to prepare young people so that they can avoid the potholes and the landmines of politics, because they have institutional history to help them do it, that they be accountable to our community and not be accountable to the party. And, you know, I hear these conversations around the country that things like this are happening. And it's really hard. I mean, if you look at the squad, you know, one of the problems they have is that they have to raise money. The other thing is that in terms of getting their message out, they don't have control of their message. I mean, they have a little bit more because you have the social media, so they can get some things out. But people are always trying to control the message, so you can't educate, you know, so you can't engage people, so they can't engage in the process. And, you know, what I found out, which was interesting in Newark, I found a lot of stuff out, but 70% of the people in the city of Newark were 45 years and younger. 70% on lease or rent. The average salary is $34,000, and some people are making $34,000 and they are working 2 jobs, right? So that in and of itself is more so, you know, working jobs and trying to keep a roof over your head makes it very difficult. But, you know, if we're going to be a democracy, we need, and I said this, either we're a democracy or not. Stop playing games. Either we are or not.
Hi.
And so anyway.
Hello. Hi, family.
Hi, who's that? Dr. Aquil is on.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Hi, what's up, family? I just wanted to say,
wait, Dr. Aquil, wait. Linda, can you find her, bring her on screen? And also, we have an elected official from Camden. I'm going to bring her on screen too, if you don't mind. Councilwoman Boucher, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. How you ladies doing?
Yeah, so let's have a conversation here. Linda is not helping me at all because she's eating. Oh my God.
No, I'm trying to get Dr. Aquil on.
I'm sorry?
I'm working with Dr. Aquil, just making sure she can come in on the screen.
Okay.
See her.
You are? Okay.
I'm on the phone.
Oh, you're on the phone. She's on the phone. That's why we don't see her. All right, hi, Shaneka. Councilwoman Boucher is here from Camden. All right, so let's just talk about, it was interesting because Linda, you just said that the average voting age, what did you say? I mean, the average person eligible to vote is how old in Newark?
45, the 70% of the population is 45 years and younger.
And what's the situation here in Camden, Ms. Councilwoman?
40% of the population in Camden is under 18.
Another 20% is under 26. So that's 60% of the population in the city is very, very young. And then I would say the rest of the numbers kind of go up by age, but the majority of the voters are like over 50. They're mainly 60, 60 and above. There's a block that doesn't vote as much. So people thought it was like the younger people, but it really is kind of like the people my age that are not voting. Because the new people start voting, or the young people, once they kind of register, they get excited. A lot of them do vote. And then you have people who've been registered for years and just never vote. So we have that.
Let me ask you, with Newark, the 45% younger, also 30% of our taxpayers are 30% of our population is picking up the cost for the entire budget for the city. 30%.
Yeah, so in Camden, the taxpayers are not paying the burden of what it costs to run the city at all. We get money from the entirety of the state of New Jersey. We get a lot of subsidies. And we get a lot of different monies that come from different state agencies that come into Camden's budget. But our tax base only covers about $21 million, and we have a $240 million budget. So when we talk about subsidies, Camden gets a lot of subsidies, over $200 million from the state.
Okay. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. Dr. Aquil, can you chime in and tell us what was your experience being a candidate on a blue ticket?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Similar to Linda's and I guess Blanca when she comes on, but my biggest challenge was getting the petition signed, getting people to sign the petitions without fear of retribution or retaliation. That was the biggest challenge. I'm talking about people that I've known for decades. I'm talking about family members. I'm talking about strangers, people that I never even knew before, that had who were directly or indirectly affiliated with the City of Newark, Newark Parking Authority, Newark Housing Authority, anything that had to do with the machine, these people would not sign. And mainly because they felt like if they did that there would be some retaliation, that somebody's job would be threatened. Also, too, we wanted to do a little thing. Again, I think, too, let me backtrack that. The biggest thing was the pandemic, getting people to open their doors, that was also a challenge. But we succumbed to all of that, But the thing is, it was just a real eye-opener. It was appalling. It was sad to find out that these people wanted to sign. They wanted to do something that they certainly had a right to do, but would not do it in fear of some type of retaliation against themselves or their family members that had some sort of tie to the machine. And that was the biggest challenge, I believe. But the thing is, when we came together, I got on late, so I guess Linda told you how we came to know each other and to decide to run together. Because 52% of the voter base in the city of Newark are women. And that council, 9-member council, only has one woman sitting on it prior to Mildred Crump retiring and then them putting her son in her stead. There were 2. But even at 2, out of a council membership of 9, is still not representative of what the constituency of the city of Newark looks like. So that was the big thing for me too. I mean, I've lived in the city of Newark for decades, and it's never, I think at one point there may have been 3 women on the council at one time, but there's never been more than 3, never. I'm sorry.
Do this. I don't know that everybody has seen this video, so I'm horrible at sharing the screen, but I'm going to try and show at least a few pieces of the video to give you guys did such a wonderful job at making your your arguments before council, and I don't want it to go unseen. So let me see if I can pull up a little piece of it and show some of it. So bear with me, Dr. Aquil, don't leave us.
No problem.
Okay, let's see. You all can see my screen?
Yes, it said Helen Higginbottom started. Now we can see the screen.
Oh, you can. Okay, so how come the video? How do I start the video? Hold on. Let's see. It's only it's a 14. Oh. All right, how come it's not playing?
You did put it on YouTube. Okay.
So what are you all seeing? Are you seeing?
It says protect our voting rights.
Okay.
With me, yeah, just start right there. Please start. You might want to open it up, Helen.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Now you can see it?
Yep.
All right, now let me make sure you can hear it and we'll be good.
These comments
know that they can
discuss
hear.
voter equity and transparency in the recent petition phase of the 2022 campaign. In the first phase of the campaign process, the questionable level of transparency, purposely or not, in the petition process suggested an appearance of voter suppression in a Democratic-leaning state, in which is no different than the work engaged in by the Republicans around the country. This, while the Democratic Party has given the impression that they're seeking to make the John Lewis bill into law to address Republican voter suppression successes that have been taking place around the country. First, or initially, there were grumblings and suggestions among those seeking to get on the ballot to run for council at large in particular, that they should have submitted all petitions on March the 4th, 2022. There was absolutely no mention of this date in the checklist provided with the petitions on January 3rd, 2022. If this was the case, it should have been indicated on the checklist. If an individual had not run before, understandably, they would not have known that 3/7/2022 was effectively the grace date. Further, there's nothing in the law that prevents the earlier distribution of petitions to affect equity and transparency in the initial stage of the campaign promise. This would have impacted the timeline associated with the process of petition qualifications and amendment. The law provides that petitions be distributed on or before 64 days prior to the election. They can be distributed before that time. That's important because there's no published legend explaining the abbreviations and codes noted on disqualified petitions regarding the voter registration status of individuals who signed a petition. The potential candidate does not have an opportunity, nor is there time to observe and question while the municipal clerk staff is engaged in manual review process to determine qualification status of the candidate's petitions. If the petitions were provided earlier than January 3rd, there could be time for observations to take place and more time to amend and correct any disqualifying petitions. This would have created the opportunity for a competitive council at large election that would provide voters with a real choice. My own personal experience is on Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. or 5 o'clock, I received an email indicating that I submitted 2,000 petitions, 1,503 were qualified, and 141 required to qualify to be placed on the ballot to run for council at large. I will tell you, when I walked out, I had 85 petitions, and I ended up with 45 petitions short of getting on the ballot. During several email exchanges that evening, I requested a meeting with the Office of Municipal Clerk's Office immediately for the following Wednesday, March 9th, to review all disqualified petitions. I reported at 10 o'clock the next morning. Based on the provided checklist, the amended petitions were due the next day before 4 o'clock. During the introductory conversations before the review, there were several nuances to the process offered by staff, which I suggested in the spirit of transparency and equity be included in the checklist to ensure transparency in the process. Further, I suggested that the information be posted on the doors of the clerk's office and that there be an instructional DVD for everybody. That would mean everybody would start from the same position and have the same information. Later, I was provided with 371 petitions disqualified allegedly due to problems with voter registration status. There were notes and codes on the petition, but no published legend available or offered to me to determine what the codes meant. Additionally, no published criteria for determining what is meant by disqualification. Candidates should be advised of why a petition was disqualified so that before they can seek to amend the petitions. Further, when we were revisiting individuals whose petitions were disqualified so that we could register them on the spot, several people expressed surprise since they had voted in the governor's election last year. And if these events are not just a matter of a lack of transparency, but rather voter suppression, it's extremely disappointing to me as a student of Newark's history, a lifelong resident of the city, and a political scientist. Why? There were Black and Puerto Rican young people who joined forces to lead the effort to address oppression against them by Mayor Adonisio's administration in the 1960s against Black and Puerto Rican people in the city of Newark. Now the perception is that there are Black and Puerto Rican elected officials who first, for their own personal gain and profit, consider the position elected officials and politicians as a career move and not service to the public. Second, they're considered the face of oppression against their own people. Thank you.
Elaine Aquil, 163 Quitman Street. Good afternoon. I'm here, excuse me, I'm here this afternoon to bring attention to everyone here in this chamber and those watching at home. Newark has a democratic problem with inclusion and equity in the political process. I know this because when I and my teammates, Professor Linda Carter and retired Sheriff's Officer Blanca Lopez, attempted to have the qualified number of petitions signed, 1,664, to get on the ballot to compete, we were met with several kinds of dirty and underhanded tactics. Registered voters who either personally or have relatives that work for the Democratic machine, City of Newark, Newark Housing Authority, Newark Parking Authority, were afraid to sign our petitions because we were not machine candidates. I know this because they said it to me. My own family members and friends that I've known for years felt the same way. I would never want to cause anyone to lose their job or their business, but this was told to me time and time again. Can't sign your petition, Doc. Know you, love you, but I can't do it. I found it to be appalling and sad that voter suppression is alive and well in the city of Newark, that folks are intimidated, threatened, and retaliated against if they're allowed to practice their civil and constitutional right to sign any and everybody's petition. We can't call ourselves Democrats and practice voter suppression. The only difference in what we experience, excuse me, and what's being done in Georgia, Michigan, Florida, and Arizona is that white Republicans have made it lawful. And here in Newark, it's done under the radar and on the down low. Because it's law doesn't make it right, and because it's always been done that way doesn't make it right. Chattel slavery was law. That certainly wasn't right. We wanted to run because in the city of Newark, 52% of the voter base are women. And there's only one woman sitting on that council. And I did sign your petition, by the way, Councilwoman McIver. That has to change so that my granddaughters and other young girls and women can see a council that looks more like the constituents that live in this city. Because they can only achieve, they can only be what they see. And if they only see one, they're never going to think that they're going to have the opportunity to sit there as well. And so in closing, I just want to read this quote from one of my favorite motivational speakers, Les Brown, and it's titled, "Is It Right?" Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it political? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? There are times when you must take a stand that is neither safe, political, nor popular, but you must do it because it's right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Blanca Cookie Lopez. I'm a retired Essex County Sheriff's Officer. I'm the daughter of late and very great to me, Raul Lopez, who was instrumental in the advancement of Hispanics in the city of Newark, including some of the people that are on the council here today. I'd like to start off by saying to Monica MacGyver, I am very proud to see a woman on this council, and more so proud to see a woman that's doing what she's supposed to do to the best of her abilities, and I want to thank you for that. I'm here today because of my experience, and I hate to go back to what I've gone through, but, and I hate reiterating an issue that I went through. I ran for president of the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which everyone here knows, and I experienced something that I was very disappointed in, very disappointed. I ran for the president of the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which is a nonprofit organization and an organization that it's supposed to be about pride and pride in your heritage and who you are. It's not supposed to be a war. It became a war. The elected officials went after me with a vengeance. They supported the other candidate. They gave her money for her election. They took her to senior buildings when it wasn't supposed to even be. During COVID, people coming into senior buildings, they had her flyers and bags that they handed out with turkeys. Everything that shouldn't have been done was done. And I was so disappointed and so disgusted. And I even tried to speak. And I tried to sit down and say, like, what is going on here? This isn't something that's a war. This is something that I would have gladly conceded to her if she won by her own merits, not because she had the political machine behind her. And the political machine shouldn't have been involved. And I was disgusted by that. And because of that, I realized this is why we have the issues that we have in the city of Newark. Anybody who wants to run for a position, any position, no matter what walk of life you are, no matter how much money you have or you don't have, no matter how much education you have or you don't have, you have the right to exercise the chance to run for a position. And I felt really disrespected, and I felt that people took advantage of their position. It was an abuse of power, and it was an injustice. And it was ugly at the end of the day, because the candidate that ran against me, she and I were friends. We were actually working together. And what happened was these people went one by one to everybody on my team and offered them anything or whatever they wanted to go against me. And one person gave in. One person gave in, and she went against me. So she didn't beat me. The political machine beat me. And then they got offended when somebody made a comment about it. You got offended. How could you get offended when this is what you were doing and you know they were doing it? And everybody on the team knew what it was doing. People that were my friends stopped talking to me. People that were working for these people were afraid to support me. They were afraid to come out. My job, my kid's job. This is disgusting that you use your power in this way to manipulate people in the city of Newark. People came after me. People attacked a senior woman that was getting petitions from me. And then on the day that I came to bring in my petitions, I was so nervous, and I worked for something. I had never done something like this before in my life. I decided to get petitions to run for council at large. It was something that I was so nervous about, and I wanted so badly to do the right thing that I was meticulous about getting these petitions. When I came in on that day, I reached this floor at 4 p.m. I saw the woman stamping all the other candidates. I got to the door, and I got there just in time, but I waited at the door because there was a sign that said, because of COVID, you cannot walk into this office. And Dr. Aquil was there with her son. So I waited at the door. When I walked in, Mr. Ken Lewis, who I don't know from a can of paint, was waiting for me and said by name, "I'm sorry, Ms. Lopez, but you are 3 minutes late. We will not accept your petitions." At the end of the day, Mr. Lewis knows for a fact, because I found out afterwards, there is a 5 to 10 minute window within the United States, wherever, for these petitions to be turned in. Mr. Lewis knows this. He should know it better than me. But at the end of the day, I appealed to him. His response was no. I walked away and I sat outside, and I had to think to myself, can I keep putting my supporters through this? When we were getting petitions, we were told straight up, I can't sign for petitions for you. I was told I can. Cook, I'm sorry. I want to support you, but I can't. They will come after me. People with businesses were afraid that they were going to have inspectors coming after them. So at the end of the day, this is where I stood. I was not against anybody. I'm not here to go against anybody. When you come into that position, I'm here to support you because you are elected officials. And if you need me, you have my phone number. You have my phone number. You don't call me. Okay, so at the end of the day, I'm not here to go against you, but I do have a right to exercise the opportunity to write for a position if I want to, and I shouldn't be come after and attacked. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, and that's what I'm here. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Helen Blanca, Cookie Lopez is here. She could join us for a few minutes.
I saw. Yeah, that was, let me get some immediate feedback while I'm looking for Cookie online. If somebody wants to tell me what your thoughts were on that video. And did you see anything that's happened in your own hometown or local politics that, did it ring true for you in any kind of way? Anybody want to speak to that real quickly?
I mean, I can speak to it. I can say that it's a mirror. It happens. I mean, I've spoken to other people who run in Burlington and Gloucester. I think that, a lot of people would say that they feel the same thing. My only reaction to it is, the reason why I started going more against the party, because I came in machine, right? It was that was the point that annoyed me, is that they go after people even when they lose, right? Like here in Camden, I don't know about in Newark or in other places, that the suppression piece, like, that's a little bit more understandable because they want you to figure out the rules. So they make it hard for you to know, and then they're connected to everybody that knows what you're supposed to do to submit your forms, getting things on time, how to get your name on the ballot correctly. My problem here is that they go after you even after you lose, right? So once you lose, you may still lose your job. They'll blacklist you, make sure you can't work anywhere, like they've done things like that to people. But from my position and now, I just think that I'm tired of, hearing the same thing from the community about making the changes to fix it and turn it around. So I think it's time to make sure that people are educated. So like new people that want to run, so that they don't keep running into, oh, I didn't know how to submit my ballots. Oh, I didn't know how to register this. I didn't know how to register that. I think that you have to create your own machine, so to speak, so that people can be in the know, like anybody who wants to do it independently. And there are groups who would fund it. So that's what we work on here in Camden now, is like, how do we put this together? Because you got to have media, you have to have your press. Like there are a few things that you need to have in your pocket if you're going to run. And the reason why the municipal clerk can get away with certain things is because everything is really based off of state statute. I'm in New Jersey, and so they're going to always go to, like when they said 60 whatever days, they're not going to ever go earlier than whatever time is allocated. So whatever is the minimum, they're going to always do the minimum. They're never going to go for the maximum because it's not a requirement. And they generally do that in government all day, just from a council person's perspective. So I can tell you. And like I said, I think that the thing that we have to do is just, band together and make sure that there's enough education and resources for people who want to run independently, but it is very polarized.
Yeah. So
that's why I want to be a council.
Yeah, what's interesting is, this all happens in the name of the Democrats who, are here to say, we are a democracy. We, promote free election and open elections. And then we hear these kinds of things. Ms. Lopez, welcome. And thank you. And Ms. Dr. Aquil, please, you're not on screen, but, just join in the conversation as you wish. But thank you. I love your passion, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Helen, I was going to say Cookie's father was part of the machine, and I think it would be great for her to speak to people because that was the one thing between them. The fact that, she lost friends and stuff as she was growing up, but Cookie's in a better position to say that than I am. So Cookie, you want to talk about that and the corruption? Because you're really, the person best able to speak to that from experience and watching it over the course of your life.
And tell people what is the machine. I mean, New Jersey has a machine, but other people on this call, and there are several machines. Machines in New Jersey depends on where you're in New Jersey. So just kind of talk about what that means.
Because the kind of machine is kind of just the people that are already in place, and they kind of work together to make sure nobody else can take any other positions from them. They help keep each other in these positions. And when somebody tries to come in, or somebody wants to make a change, or somebody wants to try to run for a position, they band together to kind of make sure this person's not going to get in. And all their supporters work together to make sure that doesn't happen. So kind of, whatever group is in there at that particular time, and they work together to fight against other people, or to try to deny people the right to just run, because anybody has the right to run. They shouldn't have to feel threatened or manipulated if they want to make a change. It's just something that anybody has the right to make that choice. little bit of background by myself really quickly. You know, I hate to keep going back to the same thing, but in order to explain where I ended up, I have to explain how this happened. Initially, I'm a retired sheriff's officer from Essex County. My father was very involved in politics back in the day. He was very instrumental in helping minorities advance in the city of Newark, you know, get businesses, get involved into law enforcement, opening doors. He was a big activist, but being an activist, of course, he had to work with those machines along the way. And as my father was involved with these machines, one of the things that I've learned to check out from is just that I rebelled for the simple fact that at the time, you know, my father, whatever people they were supporting at any given time or at any given election, we played with the kids, you know, being younger, we were friends with all these people that were running. And then, you know, the next election comes along and now they're supporting somebody else. It's kind of like, okay, we can't see those people anymore because now we're supporting these people. And so I kind of rebelled from that. You know, I was just kind of like, oh, you're not going to tell me who my friends are. And you know, you can't tell me I can't be friends with them because you're supporting this one's dad. And that's kind of my first initial introduction into the world of politics. It started in my own home, watching how they operate and how things went on at the time. Fortunately, my father was able not to make enemies. He was a good man, I have to say, and he did what he had to do. He put food on our table. He helped his community, but you know, he was part of this machine, so to say. So I ended up taking the stand of I'm going to step away from all of that. I didn't get involved. I stayed away. I tried not to be involved in anything. So I never campaigned for anybody or against anybody, but sadly, that created me being a little idle to the things that are going on in my city and being active, more proactive. I did things on my own quietly. I was always involved with donating things, but it wasn't part of a political move. It wasn't part of an agenda. It wasn't part of me trying a stepping stone. This was just my own personal thing to do because that's how I've grown up and that's what I wanted to do. So, but I didn't link myself with anything politically and I didn't get involved with anything. So fast forward to the future, here I am, much older. My father passed away. I suddenly, about 2 years ago, one of my father's very good friends, Mr. Lopez, was president of the Puerto Rican Day Parade here in the city of Newark. And he asked me to volunteer with a couple of things, just to help out. And normally I didn't want to, but I knew that he wasn't really, you know, politically connected. And I did get involved. And those 2 years, I did so much with the parade. I got to do more community work than I had ever done on a bigger scale. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. This wasn't political. It was just a fun thing to do. I enjoyed being part of the community. I enjoyed doing things to help the community. I enjoyed putting parties together. And I became very, very involved as a volunteer. I did maybe 8 events with the Puerto Rican Day Parade that year. So 2 years go by. Now they elected a new president. My father passes away, so I was kind of just staying at home. Next thing you know, I get a call from the board that unanimously, everybody on that board that I worked with 2 years before, unanimously invited me to be a board member on this board. And I agreed. I came on the board and I was excited. I had so much fun the first time around and I enjoyed doing it that I was looking forward to doing it again. But this experience I had was so much more different because the president of the parade and there were other members that were actual aides of the politicians in the city. We're running this board now. So it was a different experience. Now it was kind of like they were controlling everything. Everything was a secret. We couldn't get budgets. We couldn't get financial reports. We couldn't get minutes of the meetings. This president felt like she could do whatever she wanted. And in her own words, she was protected by the machine. So it was kind of like, yeah, I can do whatever I want with this board. In the interim, we discovered that this board, their 501c3 had been revoked. And this was not information that the rest of the board knew about. and one of the members discovered it, brought it up at a meeting. And then now that changed the whole dynamic of being on this board. This was no longer a board that I came into to have a good time. Now it's kind of like, I got to do my homework because I am responsible just as anybody else, whether you're the president, vice president, as everybody else is on this board. So much more went on, but bottom line is, I ended up going to speak to one of the political people that are involved with the politicians. And I kind of went to say, there's an election coming up. This president is not doing what she's supposed to do. We know that she has her hands stuck in pretty much everything that's going on. You know, you guys have your hands stuck in everything that's going on in the parade, and she's assisting you. But at this point, there's an election coming up. Before we ruin the parade for the community, I just want to say, find someone else to run this community, because what they're doing, what's going on right now is illegal. And she's not a good representation of the Puerto Rican women. Basically, I was told they wanted her to stay there and they were going to keep her there, which at the end of the day, they're not supposed to be involved, but they are. We know this. So I insisted, either get rid of her or I will run against her. I was told at that time, if you decide to do this, I can't protect you. I don't know what that meant. I was told, I was pretty much threatened. My daughter's a Newark police officer, and they mentioned, oh, you know, your daughter works in Newark. Oh, do you think that you can stand in front of the sheriff and ask for permits if you're the Puerto Rican Day Parade president after you supported John Arnold in the last election? I mean, this is not supposed to be even a part of the Puerto Rican Day Parade. None of this is supposed
Obviously,
to be.
this parade
Right.
is political, some kind of power that comes with this. It's more than a parade. Let me say that.
Absolutely. So at that point, when I decided to run, I was pretty much threatened. Don't do this. If you do this, I cannot protect you. And so at that point, I said, well, if you don't find somebody with integrity to run this position, I'm going to run. You know, she's not going to beat me, which they knew she wasn't going to beat me. At this point, I came back to the team that was on the board. They were all supporting me. We were all against what was going on. Everybody on the board was with me. I was running. Nobody wanted to run against me. Up to 3 days that I had to get my petitions, there was nobody to run against me. The next thing you know, then they started the political thing. They went to everybody, every member on my board, and offered them. Gave them something. If you go against her, we will give you this. If you go against her, we will give you this. They went through everybody on the board until they finally found one that took the bait. Right. She came back and said to me, you know, I have to secure my future. So at this point, I was like, well, then it's not about the parade, it's about yourself. I was like, listen, if you want to take the position, you're the one selling your soul to the devil, not me. Let's just go back into this parade. Let's fix this organization. Let's get it back to where it's supposed to be. And that's when she said to me, well, here's the problem. They want to support me to run against you, but the entire team has to go, especially you. So at that point, that was it. So I said to her, well, if you want to do this, then I guess we are going to have an election. Then I'm going to continue to run. We decided that we were going to run and make it peaceful because I didn't want a negative thing. I tried not to be negative. Let's run a peaceful campaign. But at that point, once the political machine became involved, I lost everybody that was following me. All of a sudden, they were afraid. Oh, I'm sorry, Cook. I can't support. Now, nobody wanted to support me. They were all running scared. They were afraid because they figured now that the machine is involved, you know, my nephew works for them. I have a job with them. This one got offered a job. This one got this. So now all of a sudden, I found myself pretty much alone. Bottom line is, I got an old friend from way back when comes knocking on my door to sign petitions for me because at that point she didn't realize what was going on. And I said, listen, I don't think it's going to happen. Now that they're involved, a lot of people are afraid to come out and support me. And she said, they call me Cookie. She said, Cook, you forget, you've been in this city your whole life. You've done so much. She's like, they may have a lot of people, but you forget that you have a lot of people that don't forget what you've done for them. So she came with a whole team. I ended up with a team of like 12 strong women from all my family, my friends. And again, I say it all the time. It was scary to put a group of people that don't know each other together, but I put them together in a well-oiled machine. I mean, my team was amazing. We campaigned. And I tell you, from beginning to end, my posters were being ripped down. They treated this Puerto Rican Day Parade nonprofit organization
like a mayor's campaign.
political campaign. They pulled out all the stuff. It was ridiculous. I've never seen anything like this. So I experienced firsthand for a nonprofit organization campaign what they do all the time. All the time. This
So
isn't new.
what I love about what you did in your video is that you name names. Because we say the machine, the machine, the machine. The machine are people. The machine have names,
Absolutely.
have faces, and you talk specifically about the person at the election office. What do you call it? Voter registration, whatever. Yeah, and you named him by name. And if there's this window, what did you say, 3 to 10 minutes or something?
Yeah.
He had to know that, right?
So we're gonna, I actually got to speak to Mr. Lewis after the fact, at which point, and Linda Carter was present at that meeting, where he apologized to me and said to me, Ms. Lopez, he said, do you live on Parker Street in Newark? I said, yes, I do. And he said, when you spoke at the meeting, you said your father was Raul Lopez. I said, yes. And, and I wasn't going to put this out there, but I'm going to put it out there. And then he said to me, if I had known who your father was, I would have accepted your petitions. And that basically just answered my question. You were ready to shut me down from day one. I just for you by getting there those 3 minutes late, but I was going to get shut down. That call had already been made. And the fact that he said that to me just kind of said to me, you could have taken them. So my thing is, it didn't matter who my father was. I don't care what my name was. I don't care what my background was. I don't care. If you had the power to say, okay, you know what, there is a window of 3 minutes and I'm going to accept your petitions, you should have done it. It didn't matter who my father was.
And I agree with you. But not to mention, you weren't really late. You were there abiding by the office. And first of all, I think Linda mentioned, minorities to minorities, when we start doing stuff to one another that has been done to us, we're just as bad, right? So for this Black man to do this to you, or who, I don't know if he's Black, I don't even know who
Yes, he is.
But, just the fact that he would do this is, really bad. And you're right. It doesn't matter who you were. It shouldn't matter who you were.
Right.
But I love that you named him by name, because I think one of the ways that we're going to be able to dismantle this is to not allow people to do what they do in the shadows. And,
let me tell you, Helen.
And the other part of it is we're going to have to come up and support, like those 12 women you said who came to your aid. We're going to have to be unafraid and to do more of that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I just want to say that as a result of Kookie taking on the machine, she's opened the door for other people just because I was in the Central Ward for the most part, so I had a lot of people from New York who didn't really, they really don't know Newark politics. It was a little easier for me. But Kookie, her even taking on this at any point has opened up the door. There are people who, just because she did this, they're like considering things they wouldn't consider. So she's opened up the door for people to even consider and to recognize they don't be afraid. They don't have to be afraid because she's called them out. And
that's why when I saw the video, and I only first saw the video, I think of just your part, Linda, I said to you, you got to do something more with this. People need to hear this. It needs to, we can, and then I want, when you ladies start talking, how many of us go to our city council meeting or our school board meetings and recognize that there's an open forum section where you're allowed to speak, and we should be taking advantage of it. And are we doing that? I don't know.
We have two people who want to ask questions.
Yeah, and I want to make sure Dr. Aquil, because we can't see her. Is there anything you wanted to add, Dr. Aquil? I don't even know if she's still here.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Well, basically, again, I love Linda and I love Kookie. These women have truly become friends of mine as a result of our challenges with this whole election thing. But one of the things that I think you said, Helen, early on is that what's going on in the city of Newark and in most urban areas in terms of people being able to run and get on the ballot. What the machine has done is that they have, instead of allowing constituents to pick their leaders, the leaders have decided that they're picking their constituents. And they do that by not allowing other people to come on board, just even in terms of getting your name on the ballot. So, because when you look at the city of Newark, 200 and something thousand people we just had a school board election, less than 5,000 people voted. And of course, the machine got in. The machine, people put them, they picked their people put them in there. So it's constantly going on.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm
if
sorry.
Montague is on this call or not, but Sheila is a female candidate who's running for mayor in Newark, and I see her on Facebook. She's got no play from that whatsoever. And I saw where Jackie Glass had put in the chats, had any of the ladies in this call reached out to Higher Heights, which is one of the organizations. I think, Jackie, their primary focus is to help Black women get elected or get involved in politics. But the thing that was interesting that Sheila pointed out, which is to me is another form of suppression, was in her precinct. I think she said she went out to vote for the school board like at 5:30 at night. And there were literally like 6 or 7 people all day, 6 or 7 people all day who had voted.
Right.
That is incredible to me. That is beyond apathy. That says to me that either we didn't advertise, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Democratic city, like you didn't advertise the election, like what? I've never
They didn't.
And hers was not the
It was
only.
Helen,
it was very quiet.
And there were
quiet.
There's 160,000 people registered in Newark. The last election, I think 30,000. So 5,000 people out of 30,000 who came during the last election. So, that definitely is a major problem. I'm sure it's not unique. That group is going to control a $1.6 billion budget.
And if we only have single digit people voting in any district, there will never be change. But if you look at it from the flip side, from the positive side of that, you can say if only single digit people are showing up, if I want to win, then I only need to organize very quietly, right? Because they're assuming that nobody's going to show up. I mean, if 6 people showed up to vote all day, man, I can get 10 and I won, right? So we need to look at it that way. Ms. Meister, you've been waiting for a minute. Go ahead. What's your question?
I didn't have a question. I had a comment. Back in January, I started attending the commissioners meetings that I held once a month on Thursdays, and then there, might as well say twice because they always end up with special sessions. But I observe, I don't attend physically. Because they have it on Zoom, so I go to the Zoom. Matter of fact, you couldn't really attend anyway because they make it available for the members pretty much only. But our legislative branch, I'll call it, is made up of these 10 commissioners and the mayor. And they were having a meeting, and maybe this happens everywhere, but it was odd to me. The meeting that they were holding was to determine, where we have different districts and a commissioner for each district, which is different from the commissioners that legislate. But they were going to determine if you had, for example, 3 Democrats running and maybe just 1 Republican or 3 Republicans, but the purpose was to determine which of those 3 Democrats they were going to support. And I guess the idea is you don't have the funds to support all 3, so you got to choose the one that you're going to push. And so most of them had at least 2 Democrats running for something. And a friend of mine, her husband is running for commissioner, and I forgot of what. But anyway, things moved along, fairly quickly until it got to 2 people, and he was one of the 2. And so when it didn't go smoothly, I jump on the phone and ask her, "Are you watching this?" And she told me that she thought it was the day before because her husband was in the hospital having surgery. So he couldn't be there because they could go if they wanted to, but he couldn't be there. But a lot of them were there and were given an opportunity to get up and speak and say why you should support them. But, and I don't know why she thought the meeting had been the day before, but she said she did. So she jumps online real quick and starts looking. And I have not had a chance to really talk to her, except for she didn't know it was happening. And neither did her husband, because he would have changed his, the surgery, because it was, not a big deal surgery. Well, it was a big deal, but you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean. But anyway, it just seemed really odd to me. There was so much discussion about there were 3 people, and he and one of the other people they had issues with. And so you had people speaking for them, people speaking against them. And I'm just sitting there like this, going, oh my God. And what are they talking about? And there were things that I had no idea what was going on. And they ended up not deciding on which person they were going to support. And I didn't even realize that kind of thing was a part of the process. And I wanted to say one other thing. For the 2016 election, I got involved and I started phone banking and texting and all of that stuff. And I did it again in 2020. What I learned was once you do it, you either gonna have to say no, because they're gonna try to pull you in no matter what. And I got a lot disengaged with the various groups that are out there supporting the Democratic Party. And they were big things to me and small things. Like, for example, I said, well, okay, I want to be a card carrying member. So when they send me this thing where I can make a contribution, and through that contribution, I'll get my membership card. And I guess y'all have seen it. It's that little card with a picture of Biden. And
what state are you in, Micey?
Now, well, it's Micey, but Georgia.
Okay. Oh, wow, hotbed state. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I just found out I was trying to get my absentee ballot, and I emailed it to them, and I knew I had not signed it, but I said, let me know what I need, what else I might need to do. Because, if you don't dot every I and cross every T in Georgia, you don't get to vote. And because they look at the signatures, they look at every little thing they can think of in order to throw your ballot out. And then I learned that in our county, we have one box, for everybody to put their absentee ballot in, and it's at the place where you would normally go vote, at the main office. And so even though I have an absentee ballot, I'm gonna have to go there to put it in the box, rather than having boxes all over the place the way they used to be.
They're doing everything they can to make it as inconvenient as
possible. And right now I'm wearing this boot on my foot. I can't walk, I can't drive. So I really don't know how I'm gonna do that, but one box for everybody. And
I think the difference and the point that we're making here today is, that's a red state, right? So you're kind of expecting these kinds of things to be happening. I think what people aren't expecting is that the vote is being suppressed in the blue states, because those are the good guys. They want democracy. They want people to be active and engaged. And, I think what we're seeing is something very different.
Yeah, I think it's similar in that when I was talking earlier about the commissioners, these are Democrats.
Oh, yeah,
And,
but
I tell people, don't eat your own,
yeah.
you know.
Oh, Democrats
If
are
this,
doing that.
Yeah, just want to tell you, Cookie's got to leave. So if there's anything you
Okay.
want to ask her.
Miss
before she
Micey, thank you so much. We love your contribution.
Thank you
okay.
for having me.
Go
And
ahead,
for me,
Miss Lopez.
have a good one. I mean, I just hope everyone becomes more aware and they become more active and not be afraid. I regret that it took me that many years to really just experience what I experienced and wake up. And I hope that other people also decide to stand up when the time comes to stand up and not be afraid of what they need to do. I mean, this is why they get away with what they've gotten away with for so very long.
So before you go, real quick, do you foresee that you will re-engage in politics, or is your career done?
I don't think I don't know what capacity. Nothing's ever going to be done. I feel like, in a sense, they did awaken the beast. For many years there were things that were being done that I didn't like, and I just stayed idle. It's just kind of like, I don't want to be bothered with it. I washed my hands of it. And but at this point, I feel, and I will continue to say, what I didn't do before, I will continue to do now, which is, I am not against anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to continue and support each other if we want things done in the city. But I will say this, what I didn't do before, I will be doing. Every time they slip up, I'm going to be there to make sure that they know they slipped up, and I'm gonna make them accountable. So, I want to thank them for whatever thing they did to me, to think they were going to shut me down. On the contrary, what they did was they just raised me up harder and stronger. So in the future, I don't know that I may run again. I don't know what I would do 4 years from now, but I do know that I will no longer sit down and be quiet.
Oh, very good. And that makes it. Thank you so much. I know you're busy today, and this is the best minute for you. And keep fighting, girl. There's people out here who hear it. Okay. Thank you
so much.
Drive safe. Get where you're going.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Right. Donna McCrae. Donna McCrae is on. She's been holding her hands up for a while.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hey, hi, everybody. I appreciate all that you guys are discussing, but I just wanted to make a comment that a lot of our people are reluctant or don't find it interesting enough to vote in small elections, and especially this being a midterm coming up. I live in crazy state, Florida, okay? One of the things that, and I don't know how other states are doing it, but with the homeless situation that's going on right now, particularly here, a lot of our residents who may have registered along the way, when they get ready to go vote, their ID and their registration are not going to match. So what happens? They either get a provisional or they're turned away. This, I think, is going to be a big, big issue coming up this fall, because so many people are now living somewhere else, and their ID, usually their driver's license and their voter registration, is not going to match. They won't be able to vote, or they have to do a provisional vote. So that's one thing. The other thing is, we have to let our young people know they got to vote. Get out and vote, register them, vote. So registering is going to be extremely important for this coming up. And the ladies who are brave enough to stand up at these council meetings, I commend you, because like Helen said, enough of us don't go to those meetings, I included. We just complain, but we got to go and speak up. But anyway, that's my point. I just wanted to make sure that we get our young people out who are walking around and able to vote. Here in Florida, if you've got any kind of violation, you can't vote ever again. So that knocks out a whole lot of people from even registering to vote. The state voted a couple years ago to allow ex-felons who have served all their time and paid all their fees to vote. And the governor, he started nitpicking, so they went back on it. So now it's the same. We're one of 3 states in the entire country that will not let ex-felons vote. So we'll have a whole big population of people that cannot vote. So those that can vote need to be encouraged to vote, registering to vote, make sure your addresses match your ID. And that's all I have to say this afternoon. Thank you.
So much. Thank you, Ms.
Donna,
Gray.
I would add to Donna, the gentleman who really started that initiative to be able to get felons to vote, he actually started as a result of when he was released from prison, he was going to commit suicide. And he realized he was going to the tracks to kill himself. He was going to jump on the tracks. And he realized that if he killed himself, nobody was going to show up to his funeral. So this became the impetus for him to get people to come to his funeral. And he ended up getting this thing on the ballot that was okay, you're right, until the governor and the legislature decided they were going to supersede what the people said in the state of Florida.
Yeah, we got to get involved. Miss Shakira. Hey, lady, what's going on? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. This is a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. Regarding that, the Florida, and you said there were 2 other states who say that you're never allowed to vote again if you committed a felony. So essentially what they're doing is they're saying you are no longer a citizen of this country. Why isn't anyone taking on a class action suit about that? I mean, voting is the thing that makes you a citizen. I don't understand how that law stands without objection or without people pushing back on that. I'd love to know if anyone is pushing.
And why do they pay taxes, right? If I'm not a citizen, why do I pay taxes?
Exactly. It's like taxation without representation. Actually, not even, I mean, beyond representation, you're literally not a citizen if you can't vote.
Right, exactly. Good point.
Tax money back.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Jackie, I don't know if Jackie Glass is still with us. She had mentioned something about higher heights, and she and I were talking earlier, and she talks about being involved in for colored girls when politics was too much. Jackie, are you still here?
Yeah, she's still on.
I am here.
Can I bring you on screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you go ahead and keep talking while I find you. So talk to me about both of those things, if you don't mind.
So there were a couple of years ago, I did a book signing in Newark. There were about 350 people present, mostly women, but it was this book for colored girls who have considered politics. And it's written by Donna Brazile, Yolanda Caraway, Leah Dowtry, and Mignon Moore. And these are the hidden figures of politics, because anyone that wants to become president, they have to sit with these women. And they even sat with Barack Obama, even though they were more on the lines of Hillary. They were really more Hillary. And then Donna Brazile said, well, let's give them a shot. It seems like the people want them. But I just wanted to highlight that there is a movement. And with Higher Heights, I know that they have tried to help minority women to get to win races, to teach them how to run, to teach them the rules, and to try to get them backing and funding. So I just wanted to share that.
They're out of Brooklyn, is that right?
They are in Brooklyn, yes. So Leah Dowtry's dad, Dowtry, is a community activist. And Leah was head of the the only African-American woman head of the Democratic National Committee. And she did it twice. She ran it twice.
Her father was the reverend. Her father is a reverend. Right. And
yes, Herbert Dowtry. He's an activist too. Absolutely.
For like 70 years.
So while I have Jackie on screen, Jackie, very quickly, can you talk to them a little bit about what we're going to try and what you're already doing and what When Black Women Gather is going to support in October, real quickly, if you don't mind, just a few minutes, since we have everybody here.
Well, first I want to say one of your members, Michelle Burgess,
has
partnered with us to get the word out and to get folks focused on the getaway. We have something called the Girlfriend Getaway, and we've just partnered with Heart and Soul magazine. So last year we brought 108 Black women to the island of St. Martin, and we talked health and wellness, majority of women over 50. So we had a phenomenal time. I would love it, Helen, if you can share, if I can share the screen, I can show the video. There's a 2-minute video that sometimes a picture is worth more than words. But we had a phenomenal time. We talked about health, wellness. 36% of the COVID deaths are people of color, but we're only 13% of the population. So that points to pre-existing conditions. So we talked about how to better our health. And we're doing it again this year in October. And I'll be in further dialogue with Michelle and with Helen, and we'll see how we can invite some of the ladies from Black Women Gather. So I'd love to share the video.
Right, and we'll talk more about this in depth later on, but here's a teaser for what Jackie, and then your organization is called At the Well. And I actually met Jackie, what was it, 2019? At one of her events.
It was 2000, you went to an event that we had. It was right before COVID. We had 400 women in Newark. It was a health and wellness event and was right before COVID. So we had planned on doing a lot of things in Newark. Each month we were going to do events, nutritional health, movement, better sleep, just all kinds of topics that affect us and our overall health. But of course, COVID happened and we weren't able to do it. But we were able to go to St. Martin. So I'm going to try to share this really short video.
Okay.
Let's see if
you had it a moment ago.
I'm not there.
You're like me. We need lessons.
I know, right? I'm going to get it. I just got to get the right screen.
Okay.
So let's get this one.
And then when we're finished this, we're going to go into the last two parts of our conversation where we're going to talk about student loans, and we're going to talk about this whole thing in Ukraine, and then we're going to bid farewell for a good week for everybody.
Oh, can anyone see the screen?
They see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to go to the website, which has the video, and I'm going to press play. That's the easiest way.
Yes. And you'll have to share your sound. Go ahead, it's perfect.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Thank you for life and breath in my body. Thank you for these arms. Thank you for my hips that I oftentimes complain about, and these legs and these thighs, but they allow me to step. Thank you, God, for the body I am currently in.
We know that we're all here for something, whether it's to make connections, transformation, just to rest, relax, repause. This is a divine reset.
The volume's bad. I'm not sure what's happening with your volume. But I think we got the gist of what I'll do is if we can just share the link and people can watch it on their own. But yeah, somebody put in the link. It looks amazing. I'm sure it is. Jackie wouldn't do it if it was anything but amazing. So yeah. But and we'll talk more about it in the.
We'll be shooting. Absolutely, we'll be shooting the documentary at the Getaway in October of this year. But I'll definitely share more at another time. Thank you for watching.
And she also will be on, for those of you who are in the New York area, Here and Now, next Sunday. Is it next Sunday? The 11th. I'm not sure what day that is.
We're taping it on May 11th, and it'll probably show 2 or 3 weeks after. And
oh,
we
okay.
have for the Tamron Hall show. So we'll keep you posted.
All right. Yeah, so she'll let us know. And Michelle, and thank you so much, Michelle. Michelle's been advocating. Helen, we got it. We got it. Okay, thank you, ladies. Michelle, I didn't let you say anything. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited about this topic as well as the Sisters at the Well event in October. So
great. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so real quick, Linda, let's talk about this whole situation. Let's just first start, and people, please, this is all of our conversation, so jump right in, because I know everybody on this call has some feelings. So let's start out with Ukraine.
I'll do an overview, Helen. I'll do an overview. I know that, for me, I always look at the big picture. And with regard to Ukraine, I hope you guys can see me. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, when I heard that the president was shifting all these millions of dollars from COVID to Ukraine, I was already concerned. But then when I found out how much money the defense industry is making, not only the money that they're making, the fact that they are holding themselves as patriots so that they can justify giving these contracts, so they can justify getting the contracts that are paid for by US citizens, that even made me more concerned. And with regard to the Build Back Better, it was supposed to be $1.5 trillion. It should have been $5 trillion from the start and let them negotiate it down. But the fact is virtually gone, and how Democrats, moderates, and I don't know how they can call them moderates, can vote for all this money going to another country, but you can't vote for homelessness and public housing and healthcare for all. That's crazy. But what I wanted to do is take people back real quick to the Vietnam War, because during Vietnam was two things happening. The tax rate for wealthy people was 95%. Not only that, people had to pay a 6% fee. All taxpayers paid a 6% fee in order to cover the cost of war, the Vietnam War. So now the wealthiest virtually pay nothing. They get back tax returns. They get back tax money, millions of dollars, close to billions of dollars. Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who actually started his business with $250 million from US taxpayers, that really got his business going in the first place. So when we talk about Ukraine versus Black people, who's going to get hurt the worst? Yeah, there'll be other people of color, but in terms of our numbers, we're going to get hurt. Whatever resources available in terms of programs, which we desperately need, is no more than having after school programs for young people that folks don't want to do in the first place. All they really want to do is get the police to arrest our children and start them on a path of not being able to get jobs and a host of other challenges that come with that. But the point is Ukraine, and whenever we're involved in any conflicts, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq, it's always the money is going to come from our community. And that's really important. Again, there's something, the term that they used in the Johnson administration was guns and butter. When there's money for guns, there's no money for butter. And the butter is taking care of domestic issues. Like there's some individual things, there's a basketball player over there, and I feel for them, all those other things are going on. But at the end of the day, those resources are going to be taken from our community. And when young people start acting out and everybody's like, well, how can they do this? How can they do this? Think about the money we don't have for them to have activities to engage them, to keep them from getting involved in socially, I never say criminal, socially unacceptable behavior. We're asking for it. And on top of that, the weapons that are being made, and also here in the United States, are made in the United States. And we need to keep that in mind. Those same military companies, warmongers, who are funding this war under the patriotic banner are the same companies that the guns that these children have. And so I heard something earlier today, and the woman was saying, how can we talk about young people with guns when we're always involved in these conflicts? And even Martin Luther King said, go back, we are the greatest purveyor of violence on the earth. So all of this kind of comes into Ukraine with Black people. Martin Luther King told us already, and that was guns and butter when the wealthy were paying 95% of their income in taxes. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to get started.
So in March, the United States gave $13.6 billion already for this effort. And last week, Biden proposed that we should give another $33 billion. That's a lot of money. And as Linda stated, when we're talking about, I don't remember the number, but somebody was just talking with me last week, and the number of homeless people in Los Angeles alone, it's astronomical. And when you travel, as I do, you meet people, they think that the United States is just, everybody's living large, and they don't believe that we have homeless people. But when you have, issues of homelessness, issues of people who can't afford medical care, education that we can't afford, why are we giving all this money to other efforts? And I ask that as a question for real. So, and then the thing that brings to me, bothers me about the whole Ukraine situation is when we see when this thing first started, where they were not letting they kept saying Africans, they're not letting the Africans on the trains to leave. How do you know they're Africans? They're just Black people. So we can, it's not about African, it's about Black people. They don't know if those are Black Americans, Black. As a matter of fact, a guy who's here from Camden, I can't not believe, but he and his wife is Ukrainian, and he's there in the midst of all that. I don't know where he is now, but I couldn't believe he was still there when it started. So they don't know that he's an American. They could care less. They see a Black person. So, and then, Ukraine has the reputation of being a breeding ground for white supremacy. So you got that going on. And at the same time, I wish I didn't think to look up the numbers, but the numbers of the Ukrainians who they are letting in this country ahead of other people who have been waiting. As a matter of fact, where they were saying, upset that the Mexicans were people were crossing the Mexican border, they're letting them right through the Mexican border right now. So I don't want to just be the only one talking about this. Who has any feelings about this? And
one point before you go, going back to guns and butter, keep in mind, the Soviet Union broke up during the Afghan war because they spent so much money, which we're doing now. They spent so much money against the Afghanis, who were funded by the CIA, by the way. The Al-Qaeda was funded by the CIA, and the money came through the crack coming from the United States to help fund the Mujahideen against the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union didn't just break up because of Reagan. It broke up because they spent so much of their domestic income on fighting these people in Afghanistan that there was no money. And you ended up having Russians, two things. You ended up having Russians who were homeless, didn't have any money. And on top of that, Yeltsin, who ended up in charge of Russia, was put there by the United States. And that's some of Putin's problem with us. Like, wait a minute, did you tell your people that you actually put Yeltsin in the position of being in charge of Russia? So there's a whole lot of things we don't know, but in terms of Black people, it always hurts us. Guns and butter, we don't get the butter. The defense industry gets the guns.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because of the argument that Biden gives. He says he's giving this money to stop Russian aggression. So it's not that he's, taking sides, but it's not just for the Ukrainian, it's to stop the Russian aggression. Well, I don't understand. I don't have a TV. I do have a TV, but I rarely watch it. I didn't have a TV for a while. So I'm not seeing the destruction that's happening. And I don't understand anyway, how, who thinks that you have the right to go into somebody else's living room and just destroy it? That to me is some mentality that I can never understand. But, Russians today, Americans tomorrow. So that doesn't really, I don't know how to react to that either.
Both of them have dirty hands.
Yeah, right. So, and I could phrase it in another way, but I won't. So does anybody have any thoughts of their own on the whole Ukrainian situation, for whatever, even if it's something that Linda and I have not mentioned here? Does anybody have any thoughts or want to share any comments or views about it?
A brief comment. This is Audrey. I was upset about the way that the Africans were treated in Ukraine. They were not allowed to leave board the trains to leave, and when they actually were able, the lucky ones that were able to make it to the destinations like Poland that were receiving them, they weren't received well there either. So I complained. I didn't hear much back from any of the politicians or from the NAACP. There was only light protests from their home countries of Ghana or wherever they were from. So I was very upset about that, and I was very upset about the way they were treated. I was very upset about the response. So that's my little comment today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Audrey. Anybody else have any views on the whole situation? We're all watching it play out, so it has to be more than just us.
Hi, yes, this is Nicole. I'm almost reluctant to share my comment because I'm not well versed on Ukraine, the war, the whole politics of everything, and I've just been like mentally checked out. But I feel like I I don't like the manipulation, how we're being impacted by the higher gas prices and other ways because of the war. And morally speaking, it's horrific. It's horrible that this would happen to any people, but it's not even killed. There have been other wars in other countries, particularly of people of color, where we haven't had the same amount of we haven't offered the same amount of support. So when I hear, well, I'm sure we won't mind paying higher gas prices because it's going almost like for a good cause, I'm really insulted by that.
Right.
Really insulted.
Or even the empathy that we see going out to this community that we don't see going out to other communities, and we know why. I mean, when this thing first started, you heard criticisms of how the reporters were even speaking on it as though these were real victims. Like, this is the same stuff happening to, Black and brown people all over, and sometimes America is the perpetrator, but yet still there's some humanity that we should be associating to what's happening to these blue-eyed, blonde-haired people as opposed to what's happening to others. So, and yeah, I don't appreciate paying more for at the pump either for this situation or any other.
For Shakira, I would just say that the United States has been selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, and they've been bombing Yemen for 7 years, and nobody even talks about it. So there's something like 113 conflicts going on that our taxpayer dollars are paying for. We don't know jack about them, but we know about Ukraine. So Shakira, I understand why you check out.
No, that's not Shakira. That was Nicole. Shakira is next, actually. Yes. And then, the whole thing, like this whole everywhere you look, it's propaganda. And it's like they push to us what we should be most concerned about. Because if I see another blue and yellow anything, it's like, really? Even the building that's right behind me, it shines right in my building. It's all in my window. It's all lit up in yellow and blue. And I'm like, okay, when are we doing that for what's happening in brown and black and black and brown countries? We're not doing that. Shakira, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to echo what I hear you, Helen, and what Nicole just shared about the lack of empathy that our country, our media in particular, and the European countries generally, how they tend to overlook all of the misery that occurs when Black people are being killed. It's like a blip on the screen. But the primary reason that I am concerned about what's going on in Ukraine is the aggression that Putin is exhibiting, and how his particular aggression is what's the word? Encouraging the fascist feelings of Republicans in this country. The Republicans in this country, the ones who are Trump supporters, and there are, it's a sizable number of them, they feel like Putin is fighting is kind of paving the way for them to exercise basically fascism here in this country. They really don't care too much about democracy, because they have discovered that democracy means they have to listen to people who look like us. Like the sister who was just running, like Kookie, the sister who was just running in Newark. Democracy means everybody gets a vote and everybody gets a voice, and they are very, they're galvanizing themselves so that they can oppose that posture. And so because of that, they're supporting Putin. They want to see Putin win against Ukraine. They don't really care too much about the Ukrainians. They call themselves Christians, but they really, it's just a title that they use to kind of cover up their xenophobia. They really do not want to see us participate in this in the United States in the U.S. democracy, and because of that, they are really they're on Putin's side in this, and that's
primary reason that I don't want to see the Ukrainians lose this battle. And you're right about the. Yeah. Let me just finish this point. Let me just finish this one point, Linda, and then I'm pretty much done. And with regard to the price gouging of the oil companies, it's just an excuse for them to get like a bonus, because that's all these increases in prices are doing for them. It's just giving them a bonus, because the reality is the United States has 5 years in reserve in oil, so that if we went for 5 years without them taking out another ounce of oil from the ground, we could live just as we're living now, without any loss of an ability to put gas in our tanks, put gas in our furnaces in the house, whatever else we need oil for. We've got 5 years of reserve. So this money that they're getting now at the gas tank is just gravy. So that's really all I wanted to share.
Just real quick for people to know, and you can do your own homework. I always tell my students, do your own homework. The gentleman who heads Ukraine, I think he was a former comedian or actor. I think he was a comedian. But keep in mind that the people surrounding him that are keeping in office are all Nazis. So nobody's hands are clean in this situation. And I understand, people's concerns, but I really encourage you, get your information from other than corporate television. I can tell you, when those generals come on and they talk about it, they are looking at the profit margin for the defense industry. Most of those generals that you see on MSNBC, if you go back and do the research, you will find out that they sit on boards of Grumman's, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing's, and that's why they're on, because they're generals, to give them certain integrity and, but look at the makeup of Ukraine and look up the makeup of Russia. And it's a long history that most people don't even know about. And that's the thing about Americans. We don't know a lot about other people's history. We see what happens and what the corporate television gives us that day or for that year or for those weeks. But we don't ever have a grasp of how these things happen in the first place. And again, for me, nobody's hands are clean in this. Ukraine, the United States, or Russia, or NATO. And NATO's role now is like totally different. Look at the mission of NATO and see if they're conforming to their mission. I think Finland and Sweden are thinking about joining NATO, which is provocative for Russia. There's a lot of things going on, and something simple, because I was talking about this before. The ability for a nuclear war is not so much that Putin is that crazy. What it is that with those nuclear power plants, if somebody accidentally does something that triggers one of those power plants, that's a problem. So mistakes, and even in the United States, we had several nuclear challenges that they were able to catch. But in the midst of people, bombs and things blasting all over the place, the chance for a mistake, a nuclear mistake, is very much increased. And I think that, that's my major concern. But I think everybody's hands are dirty in this. And unfortunately, the media doesn't, and it's not their job. The media's job is to actually sell you stuff. That's why they have commercials. We have very little press that's actually going out and doing the research. So I encourage you to look at, even in C-SPAN, at least you can hear different points of view. But on the corporate top, particularly MSNBC, they're 49% of MSNBC, the last time I looked, was owned by a defense contractor. So it's not in their interest to educate us about this process. They're only going to give you what's in their best interest to maintain their profit margin.
So yeah, there's a lot that we could talk. Ukraine and Nicole, I'm not very well versed on it either. I just, I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, because it's the same story. We've heard this before, just different players, And of course, oil prices are going up at a very convenient time. It's summer. People are ready to start traveling. So, I don't know if you've seen the airline tickets, everybody. It's just a trickle down to get rich while our salaries all stay the same effect. So it's very interesting. Okay, so anybody else have any thoughts on that before we quickly move on to student loans, which affects most of us? Does anybody have any other thoughts on the whole Ukrainian situation? Should we? Let me just ask this. Should we? Angela, I see your hand. So yes. I don't know what your question is, but I want us to we talk about, answer the question, should we be giving this money to Ukraine? But go ahead, Angela. I don't know what your question is. Just
Well, it's not a question, but to me, it's the outrageousness of the Ukraine brought students there. They gave them incentives to go to school and to come to the universities. Russia had done it before too, I had heard. They lure these students there. They make it so affordable for them to go to college, the financing and how much they pay. Then they come there. And then when this war breaks out, it's the town of Kherson, it's South Ukraine. Some of these students, these African students have been from the Cameroon, Senegal, different places, have been trying to leave on their own. There is a group of Black women who are working toward getting these students out, but it's the outrageousness that you'll take their money. We want you to come to the Ukraine, get an education, yet when it's a war breaking out, we're going to abandon you because of the color of your skin. And we're going to let you have students running and trying to do something against a military when their Russian troops are coming. I mean, I think it's just outrageous.
I think I saw somewhere where they were even expecting that the students should bear arms on the Ukrainian side. Like, why? Why would they do that? They're not even citizens of the country. Did you see that?
That's it, exactly. And the people who are citizens, like you're saying, they were able to leave. The European community, they were able to leave. But I did hear, I guess a month or so ago, that there were some people who were Ukrainian whose pets, I mean, I'm a pet owner, but whose pets had first choice over African and people of color. I think that's outrageous. It's despicable. That's really
beyond outrageous. And it's why, and this is what I say, I'm as concerned about what's happening there with them as they are about what's happening here with us. And if they're concerned about us, then I'm concerned about them. I mean, really? Yeah, I did hear that about the animals. And I just don't know how there's an expectation that as Black and brown people, we're supposed to be shedding buckets of tears over this. Yes, it's horrible what's happening. It's horrible what's happening because it's horrible when it happens wherever. And it's no more horrible that it's happening in Ukraine than it is anywhere else in the world. So yeah, thank you.
Helen, the rest of the world, and particularly in South America and other countries, don't have the same feelings about Russia and China. They don't have the same feelings, not that they like them or dislike them. They're just not buying the US corporate media's propaganda, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it. So they see
Africans, some of these African nations they're on board with this, and I'm not understanding that. They're holding Africans, they're not letting them leave, and then you have African nations that are siding with the Ukrainian position. I'm not understanding that. Claude, I see your hand, Miss Micey, but Claudette, you're a new voice. What did you want to share with us?
Regarding the Ukraine situation, I think we should be cautious in painting everybody in an absolute. Different circumstances are definitely happening across that landscape, and different things are happening. As far as the students are concerned, at least the ones that I'm aware of, the Jamaican students who were in medical school in the Ukraine, they're still expected to be taking classes online at this point. And those who have expressed that were enrolled to transfer, the Ukrainians are not allowing their transcripts to be released. So there is money at every angle in this thing. It's somebody has a skin in the game, and it's called money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Micey, what was your comment?
We're discussing the piece about students and how costly it is for them to go to college and to pay back the money. And I probably have an opinion about that that's very different from everybody else, because when the funds were given out to everybody pretty much during the pandemic, one of my thoughts was I thought that the funds should be given to the people who really needed it. And I was told, well, they don't have time to do, to figure out who really needs it. So they'll just give it to one big, large group. And so I suspect that with the canceling of the debt for students.
Are you talking American students?
Yeah, I thought that's what we were talking about.
No. They were talking about, I mean, it was a good segue, but no, they were talking about students, Black students, white students in general, who are in the Ukraine getting an affordable education and not being allowed to leave. And then Claudette mentioned that they're not able to get their transcripts. But the thing with the American debt, that's our next topic. So you're saying that—
I thought that we had already started that topic.
Okay,
So.
that's okay.
No, I'm saying that's what I thought.
No, that's fine. So your feeling on that topic is that you don't think that the debt should be— first of all, let's open the conversation up with prefacing it. One of the campaign promises that Joe Biden made when he was running for office, I think first it was he was going to forgive all the debt, then it was $10,000 worth of debt, and it's been back and forth, and we haven't gotten— and people are all over the place about whether or not this debt should be forgiven, how much, and to whom. And I think what we have to keep in mind is that it goes back to the analogy that was made earlier. If in fact you can excuse corporate debt, then what's so hard about excusing student debt? And we need to recognize that, students enter into these loans in good faith, and then they find themselves dealing with third-party companies that they didn't sign on with. The debt has already been paid. And one of my friends who I don't see on the call, her debt has tripled, let me not exaggerate. Her debt has tripled from the amount of money that she borrowed to what she now owed. And it becomes it's a noose around your neck, because there you are with all this debt that's on your back, and it's hard to move and navigate and buy houses and whatever. So it's a form of—
I've heard all of that, but what I'm saying is, I gave the example of how everybody got the funds because we didn't have time to figure out who needed the funds. And so I see this in that same way, that every student really does not need that help, but they're not going to take the time to find out who needs to have their loans forgiven or whatever. And what I mean by that, for example, you have a lot of students who borrowed more than they should have, more than they needed, and misused it. And I don't think those students should have that money forgiven or whatever.
Well, how are we going to ascertain who? Okay, look, how are you going to ascertain who those people are? How are you going to ascertain that so-and-so took out a loan? Because this is what they said in the 70s when, Black folks were going to school in droves. I'm telling you, I went to Glassboro State for undergrad, and it was just nothing like it is now, right? But Black people were getting education that they deserved. And these are the kinds of arguments that people use, that these people were taking out these loans and buying new cars and this and that, and they weren't going to school, they were flunking out of school and blah, 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 blah. There's no way to go back and ascertain who used the money to get their degree and who used the money to buy a new car. So I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, we've all paid taxes in some way or another, and so what? If we can give money frivolously to other countries, to corporations, they bail the banks out, bail the students out. I mean, I know that's how I look at it. And get a rein on it. When we get our student loans, there's this sense that you will pay your student loan before you pay your mortgage. And if people are being denied jobs and political offices and all kinds of things. You cannot include your student loan in a bankruptcy. What is so special about a student loan that's not more important than the mortgage on your house? And when I look at Joe Biden, he probably in his heart wants to give this forgiveness, but where does Joe Biden live? Joe Biden represents Delaware. Where are most of these companies coming out of? Delaware. And I think he's getting pressure from all around not to do this. And then you have people who feel like, I paid my debt and, you know, everybody else should have to pay theirs.
I would say, Helen, I would say a couple of things. One is that if you want to see who contributed Joe Biden's campaign, go to opensecrets.org, go to the Federal Election Commission, and that'll give you an idea of who's beholden to. The other thing is Elon Musk just borrowed $46 billion in order to do, what is it, Twitter? What's the company he's trying to buy? Twitter.
He borrowed
$46 million, and that's because, going back to Helen's point, they have socialism for corporations. And
But he didn't borrow that money. That's his money.
No, that's not. It's backed up by United States taxpayers. If he defaults, we're going to pick up the tab like we always do. Not Elon Musk, but the other part is the only reason why Joe Biden actually agreed to extend it the last time, because these kids are protesting. This is a midterm election, and they need those young people to vote Democratic if they want to be able to pull out anything for the midterm election. The other part, what is it? Yeah, the education. So it's things behind the scene. It's the fact that he's from Delaware. Most of those third-party companies are from Delaware. They're incorporated in Delaware. If they were, I think the debt is $1.6 trillion or something about that. If you were to cancel the debt, people already know that would stimulate the economy of the United States. The other part is that what you're hearing, the spin that you're hearing is coming from those companies who don't want to have this debt wiped out. You got to look behind and see who is behind the media spin to make sure that we have a certain perception of things so that we will agree with them against our own interests.
Right, exactly.
Helen, can I jump in?
I would like.
Can
No,
I jump in?
I want to finish what I was saying. There's a couple, two more things. One was Helen mentioned it. I empathize with those young people who paid their money back, and now other people aren't going to have to do that. I don't see it as fair, and I believe in fairness. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, I don't have a problem with helping the students who have a lot of debt and can't move on. But I see other ways to do it than totally forgiving all their debt. Maybe no interest, because I read an article about how much interest has grown on the monies that they borrow. Maybe take the interest away, or find some other ways where I think that if it's forgiven, there should be something that they have to do in order to earn that. Maybe contribute to the country in some way. Let me finish, please. Or no, I'm just saying, I just want to say one other thing. I really think that people who do these things are not being taught responsibility. I mean, I taught at the university for 26 years, and I served in various positions. And one of them gave me the opportunity to see the students borrow more money than they needed and immediately go into Atlanta to party and spend that money. But now it's going to be forgiven. So they're going to be rewarded for being irresponsible. I just don't like that. I think there should be, we want the young people to be less of those kinds who think that we owe them something. They have, I was around them for 26 years and they haven't changed.
Well, all I have to say to that, Micey, all I have to say to that is for every one student that did that, there's 100 who didn't. And it's just impossible to know who those students are. Look, in any situation, look at the people who file bankruptcy for the companies that they absolutely destroy, and they turn around, and what do? All their debt is forgiven. They're not held accountable in any kind of way. And they start another business and they file bankruptcy again. And the only reason that there are any ramifications to or constraints on bankruptcy now is because the lay people have gotten aware of it. But rich white men have been filing bankruptcy for their companies since the beginning of time, and nobody cared. So I'm not here to say that a student who bought a Mercedes Benz, I don't care what they bought, instead of going to school, and we're going to penalize a whole group of people, because what we have to deal with is the fact that these companies have abused their privileges with these students in it, not only the student loans, but how about the Visa, the credit card companies? All these people took advantage of students. So we can't, so what, the student went and bought a Mercedes or a new fur coat? They were enticed to do that. And then they came out of school strapped with debt. And I don't have any stats any more than you do, but I'm sure that those people are in the minority. I went to college too, and yep, I saw people who bought, maybe they needed that car though, because they didn't live on campus and they needed to get back and forth to school. I don't know, but I just think they're in the minority. And if we're going to forgive this debt for corporations and for, I think the comparison to bankruptcy is you cannot, there's nothing you can say that justifies bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not a bad thing. As soon as you file bankruptcy, guess what? New companies are coming at you. People are coming at you to start new companies and new credit right away. And you just need to be good for 7 years and do it all over again. But I respect your point, Micey. So we have 3 hands up. Claudette, you've already spoken. Simone and Patricia, let me hear from you guys real quick. Simone, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm one of those students who took out student loans for the second time around. My first degree, I went to school, I paid off those loans. I had a job. Unfortunately, it was a dead-end job. And I wanted to change my career. And in order to do so, it required me to go back to school. Yet I didn't qualify for any form of financial aid. So my options were either to stay in this dead-end job for the rest of my life or take out student loans to go and do something that I desire and love to do, which is what I do now, which is teach. So although there may be those that have abused the system, I did not. I utilized it because that was the only option I had to be able to have a better life for me and my family. So when I hear people making generalizations about, oh, they took out more money than they needed, they did this, they did that, that may happen. But I'm one of those that would love to have my $100,000 in student loans forgiven. I can buy a home with the amount of student loan that I have. And I do happen to own a home as well. So even if it was only 50%, heck, make me pay back 10,000. But when you have banks and companies file for bankruptcy, when the banks were bailed out, they did not do anything within the communities in which they were working. They got a bailout. The taxpayer, which is you and I, paid for it still. So at this point in time, yes, those of us that are dealing with something that is enormous with this debt, yeah. Because if you look at the cost of education, it is ridiculous. Yes. Yet almost impossible, depending on when you came along, to be successful without a college degree. So you're almost put into debt because there's the only option. There were very few jobs back in the day that you could be successful at without a degree. Very few.
Yes. Yes.
So
yeah,
I'm all for it because I would love for it to happen.
Thank you.
Helen.
I'm on your team.
Helen, I got 3 things to say about that. I agree with the last young woman who spoke. 2 things. The process in terms of how the debt is calculated is wrong and needs to be addressed. If they're going to put in a solution, they need to look at how this money is being capitalized. On my own personal case, just like the young lady, I went back for a second degree, borrowed 20,000, paid back 10, and started law school. So I was on the forbearance plan. Did not understand that the 10,000 that was left would be capitalized. And 3 years ago, I ended up paying $130,000 for $10,000. And they lost my payments. $10,000 of my payments were lost. And you know what they told me? Sue them in federal court. And I still plan to, because I want all my money back and treble damages. And I was told that when my loan got denied for the last cycle, it was because somebody made a capricious and arbitrary decision that they weren't going to approve it. And that was wrong. And that's what the student loan ombudsman person told me. The student loan company has been, the servicer had been in the serious kind of audit or problems with the Department of Education. So for a year, things were frozen and I still had to be paying them $1,200 a month. The process is broken. I need redemption. I want my money back, not just for me, but for other people who were in the forgiveness program as well. Over the past 15 or 20 years that forgiveness program had been in effect, only 100 people, black, white, purple, pink, or whatever color of the planet you want to call them, only 100 people got their loans forgiven. So something is wrong with this system. If this is the only debt that you cannot declare in bankruptcy, if this is the only debt that you go to your grave with, and it probably passes on to your family members, no, something is wrong. And I'll turn it around to the PPP loans. When the PPP loans came out, senators, congressmen, all kind of government officials got those PPP loans for hundreds, thousands, and millions of dollars, and they don't have to pay them back. Hell yeah. Reduce it, remove it, zero the balance out.
I would say a couple of things. I just want to jump in, Helen, real
Wait a minute,
quick.
let me ask a real quick. Claudette, are your loans with Navient?
They were not with Navient, no.
Because Navient
they were with the Federal Direct Student Loan Organization, and the servicers, I was able to trace all the servicers that handled my loan, and every time somebody touched it, 10 grand got added to it.
Right. And
the last person told me, go take out a refinance on your house and pay this off. And I told her, hell to the no, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. What I was going to say is real quick is that what she's saying, people should not have to go to court on their own individually. That's a discouragement because folks don't have the money as it is. Joe Biden can easily, in his capacity as the chief executive officer for this country, but what he was going to do initially is he was going to send it to Congress, knowing that it would never get through because of all the pressures on Congress. All he has to do in his capacity is write those loans off. That's all he's doing. Now, let me just tell you, majority of the people who owe this money are primarily Black people. That's one. And then the other part for, I think, was Simone, just to let her know that in the 1960s, as more Black people started going to college, different public colleges, the state of New York public, the whole state of New York public college system, the whole state of California public college system were all free. They were free. And even as late as when I went to law school in 1980s, I paid $750 a semester to go to law school, which means that you can raise hell, right? Because you didn't have to pay. And most of the people I went to school with were not even interested in being lawyers. They just wanted the information, but for $750, so they have decided that people will not go for the information and you'll have to take certain jobs, especially in law school. You can't just be a public defender when you got to pay back all that money, unless they forgive your loans or, you know, those different arrangements. You have to go work on Wall Street. You have to take certain jobs in order to pay. So it's changing our society. I will tell you guys that there's an organization, as a matter of fact, they're trying to buy up debt. They're trying to raise money to buy up debt, not only for people who have medical problems, you know, they're in debt because of medical problems. They also, it's the debt resistors, and whatever people might think about Occupy Wall Street, these are the issues that they were talking about because they saw this happening and they were trying to wake up Americans. Keep in mind, the people on Occupy Wall Street were primarily white college students who saw their debt was going to keep them from being able to get married and buy houses. And they were forewarning people of what was coming down the pipe. And so now we can see it. But we got to put pressure on the president, and the young people are exactly doing it. They're saying, you want our votes? You're going to have to wait. They don't want to hear about 25%. They don't want to hear about 10%. They want to see it wiped out. They know who has the power to do that.
And they can do it. And you know, and I'm glad you said that, Linda, because when somebody was talking, the point went out of my mind. A lot of these people who are sitting home saying, I paid my debt and you need to pay yours too. Yeah, you paid $2 a credit. These kids are paying, I mean, I remember when I was at Howard, I forget what the, just the change in what it costs for a credit is just ridiculous. So you can't even compare. If I were paying $750 a semester to go to law school, I probably can pay that off, right? But I can tell you when I went to law school, and when did I go to law school? In the early 2000s, my debt, I don't know, like 15,000 and that's just for classes. And it's just ridiculous. And then you add all that other stuff on top of it. It's crazy. So, and I think as we're having this conversation, the real conversation needs to be about addressing the cost of education in the country. It's ridiculous. We should not be paying these astronomical prices to go to school. So it goes back to the Ukraine situation. If we can give billions and billions and billions of dollars to, Ukraine and Israel and whoever else we give money to, why can't we take care of American citizens and have affordable health care and have affordable education? It's ridiculous that, we have to make, and as Claudette was saying, why is there so much protection around student loans? And how come nobody's asking that question? You cannot include it in a bankruptcy, which is ridiculous. If it's due and your mortgage is due, you need to pay that. That becomes more important than a roof over your head. I mean, I really don't know. I would love for somebody to answer, if you have the answer, what is it that's really happening with these student loans, and what's the game? What's a loan shark game?
I'll tell you the game, Helen. When Betsy DeVos went in there, she went in there working for the servicers, and she let out under her administration multiple billions of dollars of awards to handpick servicers to be able to go and get servicing on these loans. When I'm paying $1,200 a month, when I was paying $1,200 a month, you know who got the bulk of the money? Maybe $200 went towards the principal of my loan, and $1,000 went towards the servicer. That's who's getting fed in this process.
Right.
They're making buku money hand over fist as a servicer.
So how do we hold our Congress and senators accountable?
Department of Education needs to pull those awards that they gave to those services, just like how when Clinton went in there and he had a vengeance, he got rid of Sally Mae and made it go privatize and become NAVSTAR. They need to do the same damn thing. He had a vendetta. He had a vendetta against Sally Mae, and that's what he did. We need a vendetta against what's happening now. And then the second piece of this, somebody put in the chat, there's programs for forgiveness. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, the programs exist, but they don't execute.
That's right. It's not
They do
enforced.
not execute. Less than 100 people in the years since it's been set up have been awarded opportunity.
Wait a minute, help me with that. Are you saying that, because my understanding is that if in fact you're a lawyer and you do public service work for 10 years.
Or a doctor or a teacher.
So you're saying that this is not happening?
It's not. The majority of the people who have done those loans, those loan forgiveness programs, over 90% of them have been denied.
Yes.
And it's a game. And again, go back to the people who are funding these campaigns, because they make sure that this happens. It's no reason. One of the reasons why, I mean, if you go back to the 60s, we have to go back when credit, like you said, Helen, when I was at Rutgers, it cost me $15 a credit, $45 a class. They don't want us to raise hell, because if you have time, you're paying $45 and you can get rent for $60. You can raise hell and not worry about a roof over your head and food in your stomach. So if you got to pay $1,200 a month, and it's more than your mortgage is with taxes and insurance, that's a problem. So all of this is a way to keep the squeeze on the general public. And you're right. And I'm gonna go back to civics. We need to understand. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read Frank Zappa, if you don't mind. That's my last thing I'm gonna say. I want to read.
Before you do that, while we're talking about this, I see Lena. Lena, you say you're a teacher and you went through the 10 years and your loan was not forgiven. Can you talk about that? Lena? Oh, maybe she doesn't want to talk about it. She put it in the chat, but I guess. Oh, go ahead, speak up, Lena. We can hear you.
She's
Had a
having
hard
problems
time.
with
I had to find the unmute button. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. I taught for 30 years. And I did special ed and regular ed. And I applied for forgiveness and they denied it. They gave me like maybe about $500 or $600. That was it. But that was just a drop in the bucket.
Okay. And what year was that?
Year it was like, oh, I stopped teaching in 2017.
Oh,
so it was like, yeah, it was like recently, yeah. In the last, I say the last 5 or 6 years, yeah.
Ellen, I have my piece. Let me read my piece and then I'll get off. Somebody's from you.
No, that's Lena. That's Lena's phone. Thank you, Lena.
That's not me making noise though.
Oh, it's not? That's somebody else's phone? Okay.
That's real quick, guys.
Somebody needs, but you know, that's interesting. I'm glad that you shared that, Lena, because Linda, can you help me? I know you can. I need to find out who. Somebody needs a mute. I'm not sure who that is.
In connection with correctional facility and our donations would
tell
be
who it
used
is.
for their release packages. They give the inmates kind of basic needs items as they're released.
I just was sent a chat to everybody.
I think it's
I think it's Simone. Can you mute her? If you go to participants, you can see the mic is on.
Oh.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that was news to me. I had no idea. And I have friends who are involved in the loan forgiveness program. And I wonder how many of them know that it doesn't really happen that way. So that's interesting. But go ahead, Linda, read your Frank Zappa piece.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, guys, so this is my piece here. Civics was a class that used to be required before you could even graduate from high school. You were taught what was in the United States Constitution, but after all the student rebellions in the 60s, it was banished from the curriculum and was replaced by something called social studies. Here we live in a country that has a fabulous constitution and all the guarantees. It's a contract between the citizens and the government, but nobody knows what's in it. So if you don't know what your rights are, how can you stand up for them? And furthermore, if you don't know what's in the document, in this instance, the Constitution, how can you care if somebody's shredding it? What we see happening is that people don't know. And I would add that in the segregated South, when people were sharecroppers, the teachers were teaching 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And because the older students, if you're in the sharecropping community, in the spring, you have to go and help the family. But they were teaching them, excuse me, they were teaching them about civics when they couldn't even be citizens. And most of us, I will tell you that the opportunities that we have are because of not Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King, but because of these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds who would wear their Sunday go to meeting clothes, prepared to be put in a casket if they died, or standing up for their parents and their grandparents' dignity. And when they come up north and they go to the West and they go to Chicago, even though they're not necessarily understanding that they're aware of this, how you think this is where organizing comes from? So when they come to these cities and you get the first Black this and the first Black that and the first Puerto Rican this and the first Puerto Rican that, that's because of these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds who were taught by teachers how to navigate through government when you couldn't even be a citizen, right? So if they know how to be citizens, then all these people with all these degrees should definitely know how to organize and how to navigate and negotiate and make government accountable to us. You know, we're looking for elected officials. Every time I hear that, it annoys me. I'll just say this. The only politicians in the history of this country that were willing to die for the people, which you would call leaders, were Adam Clayton Powell, Shirley Chisholm, Harold Washington, what's his name from DC?
Marion Barry.
Marion Barry, and it's one more, I'm missing somebody. Anyway,
Harold Washington.
They're the only elected officials in the history of this country, and notice they're all Black, except for Adam Clayton Powell was Black Puerto Rican. But they were the only ones that we can call leaders who were willing to die for you. But when you put the tag leader onto them, you just given your power to them and said, you lead me, you tell me what to do, you determine if I have power, you determine how my taxpayer money is going to be spent, you determine. And then we don't even look at who's behind them. And I said, you can go to Federal Elections Commission. In your state, there's an elections commission. They know nobody's going to look at it to see who's funding these elected officials, who is in their pockets to make sure, like the president, the corporations, those third parties who are making all this money are the people who put him forward for all these years. For all these years, he's beholden to them. He could easily wipe out this debt, but he's not going to do it unless we make him, as Franklin Roosevelt used to tell R. Philip Randolph. Was R. Philip Randolph? Did I get it right? The head of the sleeping car porters. Okay. What did he used to tell him when he used to have dinner with FDR, Franklin Roosevelt? And he was telling him about the plight of Black people, the hanging, the lynching, you know, all the bad things that would happen to us. And Franklin Roosevelt told him, you're going to have to make me do it because I got a lot of different people pulling on me. So when Randolph was about to do that march, where he's going to bring all these Black people to Washington, D.C., then things happened because, you know, Franklin told him, make me do it. He said, okay, you said make me? Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you do it. And so if we're not willing to make them do it, and if we're going to let them think that they're leaders and we're going to give all our power to them, and thank you, dear. Thank you, Josephine. A. Philip Randolph, I got his initials all messed up, but I know what he's capable of doing. If we're going to make them leaders and turn all our power over to them, this is what we get. And we've had instances throughout the history of this country where people decided that's not happening. It wasn't only Black people, it's poor white people. A whole bunch of people have tried to make them accountable. It's a fight. They're not going to turn over this power just like that. You're going to have to fight, and you got to be willing to sacrifice. And I can tell you right now, if you have something you think you could lose, that's going to keep you in check so you don't do anything. I'm of the opinion there's nothing I have that I'm not willing to lose for the benefit of the people. Not a problem for me. And I know other people have different, you know, they have different ways to keep people in check. And as long as they know they can keep you in check, all these things that we're talking about today will continue to happen. But I can tell you, those of you who have African heritage, African ancestry, you have to keep in mind, they had nothing to lose. They were willing to fight. If they hadn't done what they were doing, the nice houses that you're in, the salaries that you got, the pensions that you have, the Social Security, you wouldn't have, but for the fact they were willing to put themselves out there because they realized that they don't have anything to lose.
Well, people also, and so when we tried to talk about it last week, we also, our ancestors operated as a collective. Now people operate from an individual perspective, and they have no appreciation for the fact that, somebody laid down so that you could stand up. And until we get back to that, and that's as a nation, not just as specifically, particularly as Black folks, but as a nation. And as long as you're strapped with debt, it's a way of keeping you silent. It's a social control. And so if in fact, why is education a luxury? Like, and you remember they pulled out of the school anything that would require you not to go into debt. Remember, you can come out of high school with a trade back in the day, whether it was a hairdresser or a bricklayer or whatever, auto mechanic, you graduated, you were ready to work. Now they want everybody to go to college. Like, why? And we all have this, humongous debt. So anyway, this has been a good conversation. I think that we have everybody who had their hand raised, we got to them before we close out. Is there anybody else who has just a burning, comment to make on any of the issues that we've covered today before we sign off?
I wanted to share this. One of my friends' son finished college this term, and he got offered a job with one of those big companies, and they started him at $150,000. And I want to know if anybody thinks that's a good starting salary. I did, so I was wondering what other people thought.
What value is he bringing to the table? They may be getting more out of him than he's getting out of them. So his experience, what are they looking for? How much control does he have over, his destiny in the company?
Let's be clear. Let's just be clear. Most people making $150,000 are doing fine. I mean, like, we can't even you can't even negate that. That's a good salary. I don't know what he's doing, but you know, he's not. Yeah, I don't know, but what is his debt? I don't know what relevance does that have to this conversation, I guess is the question I have.
I don't necessarily know if it has any. I just wondered what people thought.
Oh, well, $150,000. You know, I don't. You know, if you're living in New York and the average rent, they said this week, they said the average rent in New York is $3,500. We all need to be making $150,000 and better. I just don't know where we're going as a society. And, you know, and we are so conditioned to parrot the snippets that are given to us by corporations, by politicians, by lobbyists that are not in our best interest. And if we stop and think for a minute, like, what are we saying? You know, how does this serve me? You know, and it keeps us pitted against one another, right? I paid my loans, you need to pay your loans, or like, what good does that do us, right? And they're happy. They sit back and laugh all the way to the bank, and you know, and we're going at each other. So I'm just gonna say, you know, call me biased or whatever, but you know, forgive the loans. Be done with this. Let people, but don't just forgive the loans. Forgive the loans, and then at the same time, hit a reset button for how student loans are going to be treated in this country, because otherwise we'll be right back here 10, 20 years from now. So they have to look at what are we doing, and somebody really needs to, you know, where are the lobbyists for students or for people who have these loans? Because I had no idea. I thought this loan forgiveness thing was a panacea, that, you know, you do these 10 years of living on a pauper salary, and then you're going to be fine. And I'm disappointed to hear that that's not what's happening. So that was news. That was news.
In New York,
Miss Helen.
In Manhattan,
yes.
Manhattan, you have to be a working millionaire, basically, in Manhattan to live there and be comfortable. And I'm talking about working millionaire. I'm not talking about somebody who's just collecting interest on their benefits. You got to be a working millionaire in Manhattan, in certain parts of Manhattan, in order to live there comfortably. And that doesn't mean you live in high on the hog. You just, like, you getting a paycheck. If you lose
barely
your job,
making it,
you don't have any savings.
Who has the money to pay $5,000 a month for rent, mortgage, whatever? And you know, I was on a call with Melinda. I don't know if she's still on the call. We were reading the 1619 project, and we were just talking about this the other night. Is the bottom going to fall out? Like, what's going to happen? You know, people who are buying these multi-million-dollar homes. I don't even know what the mortgage is on a multi-million-dollar home, but when you can't pay that, what happens? And somebody predicted that we're going to see 1929 again with people jumping out of windows. Well, I won't be jumping because, you know, but I mean, I really don't know how you afford it. And you know, even, you know, you look at Washington, D.C., which is, like, to me, the worst case of the most blatant gentrification in the country. And it's like these young, yuppie white kids are like, where are they getting this money from? I don't understand. You know? So even though your person that you spoke of, Maisie, is making $150,000, I have to wonder what's his white colleagues making. And that's how.
Yeah, I'm with you, because having worked on Wall Street and working for these consulting firms, if they're paying him $150, he's underpaid compared to his colleagues.
I'm sure.
It really depends on what he's doing.
I remember getting a loan a couple of years ago, $40,000 on a signature, and I was impressed for like 2 seconds, because the next thing that came to my mind, if they're doing this for me, what are they giving to white folks? And that's what we always have to keep asking ourselves. Don't think you're special. You need to say, all right, but what you doing for other people? Shakira, somebody else was trying to speak up too at some point. Shakira, I see your hand again.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk, just say a little bit of something about the salaries that these big companies are paying. My daughter just took a job with Uber a few months ago. I won't tell her salary. I'll just say that she's making over $500,000 a year, and she's one of the lesser paid in the organization. So these people are making huge salaries. So I don't know what he's doing for 150.
Well, I think
all I can say is that the larger companies are paying huge salaries, and they're paying people who are not I mean, they're not all that smart. I mean, it's kind of disappointing, but in any event, I just wanted to say that.
Is it a setup? Is it a setup? Is it a setup? Because now you're used to this money. You went and bought this house that's, $500 million, and you got to put up with my crap because you can't afford to maintain your lifestyle if you leave this job. So
that's if you live into how much they're paying you. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, but most people will. Most people are. I mean, look at the ball players. Isn't that what they do? You roll out, you're buying some car, big fancy cars. So the smart, I tell you, one of my friends, her son unfortunately passed away, but he was up for a promotion and his salary, I think it doubled. And my advice to him was to keep living like you're still making $50,000.
That's right.
And just put that money away. Because it's going to come back to bite you at some point. But so, this whole thing that we have to recognize is that the United States is built on free or cheap labor. And they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that we stay in positions where we are reliant. And that's this whole thing with people, the great resignation. So many people quitting their jobs. If you think that corporate America is not going to put a squash on that, you're crazy. I don't know how they're going to do it. They're already saying, that if you're getting money through Cash App or any of those places, that they're going to be coming down on you. I mean, that you have to show if you get more than $600. But trust me, they're going to be examining taxes and all that stuff. And they're going to probably try and make examples out of people to show that, they already did it somewhat with the PPP loans or whatever they were. Some people have already been prosecuted for taking those loans because they said they had companies. They didn't really have companies, whatever the case may be. But they need you back on the plantation. Trust, and that's whether you're Black, white, or whatever. They want you back on the plantation, keeping them rich. You're not supposed to figure out how you can be comfortable on your own without putting up with their nonsense or without making them rich. So
I heard it in a boardroom several years ago that the goal is to make the USA look like Germany. Nobody owns the land. Nobody owns anything. So they've psychologically prepared you for it. You use Uber, you don't own your car. You lease, you don't buy it. And you rent, you don't own it. And if you can't afford to buy it, because pretty soon you won't be able to access it. All you'll be stuck with is some corporate housing from all those investors who are buying up the single family homes. And some communities, I saw it in North Carolina recently, are putting in new bylaws that you cannot buy property without residing in it. And if it's vacant, it has to stay vacant for up to 6 months or a year, which is a way to discourage the investors. But it's been happening and it continues to happen. And it's certainly in certain demographic areas, urban centers are where employment is. So check it out.
That's their whole problem with Airbnb. People are using their own homes to make money and cutting out the hotels.
I live in New York, and the cost of owning a home in my community is crazy. I bought my house 10 years ago, and in the last 10 years, my house is worth double than what it is I bought it. I could not afford to buy my home if I wanted to buy a home now.
I have that same situation.
And I make six figures. So when they was talking about the young man making 150, I make six figures, but I could not afford my home. My home is worth a little more than $500,000.
You know, they say a lot of Black folks are, well, they say house rich and cash poor. So that's why when the white folks come knocking on your door, the developers, people are selling their homes.
A lot of people are.
I heard on the Joe Madison program one morning, which makes a lot of sense. Don't go selling your home till you got a new one, because the rates are so crazy that it sounds like they're going to give me $1 million for my home. Try to find a new one. Yeah, and so whoever was, I think it was him who was saying it, but like, do not sell your home until you have another one in the pocket.
And it is crazy that I'm looking at how much homes are going for in my community. My community is primarily Black and brown people. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how are these people going to be able to afford these homes? Because like I said, I couldn't afford to buy my house if it was on the market.
Yeah.
Watch the homelessness go up. Watch homelessness go up. But you're absolutely right. What's going to happen? The economy is basically going to crash. The capitalist economy's changed almost. I mean, we have a long one. This is 2022. The last one was 2008. This is a long time. They've been propping up the economy for all intent and purposes. So usually every 7 to 8 years, if you had a roommate that did this, you'd be really pissed off. But we crash every 7 to 8 years. Go back to 1929 and then come back and see how many downturns. Well, only reason we didn't have those downturns now I think about up to the 50s is because of FDR's work with the Great Society and actually creating a middle class, because the wealthiest people paid 95 cents on the dollar, right? And ever since then, they still mad at him for making them, that's JP Morgan, the Rockefellers, all these people are still mad. He's been dead for what, 70 years, and they still mad at him for how dare you make us pay taxes. Not only that, as a result of his work, that's how we got a middle class. That's how we got unemployment. Not that we got it, because Black folks didn't qualify for certain things at that point, but there was the beginning of a middle class. So in the 1950s, 1960s, as I said, Vietnam, the wealthy was still paying 93 cents on the dollar. When Reagan came in, it dropped to 70 cents. By the time Barack Obama's in office, it's down to 4% on a good day. And since Trump, they're getting big money back on their returns. So, we're due for a crash, like soon.
I don't know. But I've been saying that for a while, and somehow we just keep trugging along, because it's just like, how insane is this? And it's just greed. Greed will be the death of this country.
It's been artificially propped up, and they're now pulling out the planks.
Exactly. That's exactly it. They've been propping it up, faking it out on us. And so who's going to bail it out? And then somebody just talked about, whatever you talked about also goes with this whole metaverse thing, right? They're buying up swaths of land. It's like a company town. We're going back to company towns, or you'll be homeless. But Helen, you're right. This whole thing is about how much can we get out of the workers without paying them anything? Absolutely. Basically providing them with room and board, if that.
Yeah, I was talking on Facebook earlier this week, because I don't know about you all, but in New Jersey, one thing, we're getting ready to go to use, there are no more bags. You got to pay, you got to bring your own bag or buy a bag. Now, and we already know that we're bagging our own groceries. So all these things that are built into the price of your food or whatever you're purchasing, what's the benefit to us? I personally don't do self-checkout, because I'm like, am I going to get a discount because I rung up my own stuff? I'm putting somebody out of work. So, these things that we're doing, like, I remember when I was living in New York and they tried to introduce the, no plastic bags or whatever, but it was entirely up to the merchant how they wanted to charge you, how much they wanted to charge you for bags in the store. And if the merchant
still charge you in New York, it's 5 cents for a bag.
Oh, have they started that?
Oh, they've been doing it for the last 2 years. You go to the store here in New York and you don't have. Yes.
I left in 2000. I left right before the pandemic. So they,
They charge you 5 cents a bag.
Yeah. And, and the thing is that the stores are saving money, because, the cost of those bags and the bags that they advertise their store on those bags. And now you want me to pay for it. So I just don't know, when do we start, riding down the turnpike? The streets are raggedy, the traffic's backed up, but I'm paying you to be inconvenienced. And we just keep saying, okay, and the fees that you pay, try staying in a hotel. What are the fees you're paying? You're paying a resort fee, a local tax fee, this fee. And sometimes, you'll ask people what do you call it, a customer service rep? They can't even tell you. They're like, ma'am, I don't know what the fee is for. We just know we charge. And I just think as a country, I think that, the 1% at some point is going to push the 99% to a point where we're just going to say, I'm done. We're not taking it anymore. And that's why they want to keep us at each other's throats. Because as long as we're going at each other, we're never going to stop to say, look, you're getting screwed too, especially Black versus white, So anyway, this has been a great, great conversation as usual. I love all you ladies. And, next week is Mother's Day. So traditionally we have met on Mother's Day, and I know that some people don't make it, but it's just an opportunity for, we don't have a program, we just talk. I think one year we had people whose mothers had passed, they came and, they wore something special that was their mother's, or, people come and tell stories that are special about their mothers. So it's just a time for those of us who, don't have mothers, and those who, whoever, but we'll do a call, but it'll be very informal. It'll just be us, and we'll just talk about mothers. And, those of us who don't have mothers, such as myself, it's just an opportunity to, we can celebrate too. So we'll, Linda, are you game with that this year?
Whatever you say, Helen.
Don't let her fool you. She is not that.
How many weeks have we been doing this? This is longer than most programs on television. And this is not easy, guys. I have to tell you, even though, you get notices on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's not an easy thing to do. And Helen's a real trooper, because during the time I was running for office, I just couldn't do it, but she pulls it off. She's there 4 o'clock. I commend her for doing that. My stuff is a little heavier. I told her she's NAACP and I'm radical. But I'm so happy that you guys still join us no matter what. Most people join us. We've had like anywhere from 50 to 200 people who come on the calls. And, during COVID, obviously when people have nowhere else to go, we were a hot item. But we still, all things considered, people still come on. I know for some people it interferes with, the church stay just chilling out, but we really appreciate you coming on. And I think Helen needs to be commended for her stick-to-itiveness. No matter what, she can, now that she can get away, she can still get on, with Zoom and stuff. We still have all this available. So we so appreciate you guys for coming on. But this, we were at 56 weeks.
Chicken noodle?
Hi, whoever said chicken noodle. We were on, we did 56 weeks straight.
Yeah, I've lost track. It's we've been doing this since March 22nd, 2020. So
yeah, if anybody has any programs, and I mean, she has an excellent example with the young ladies who come on about mental health, where they're going to get 4 weeks during the course of a year where they come to the topic. So if you have something that you want to do, it keeps Helen from talking and me from butting in. That's
Thanks
fine.
to both you and Linda. Excellent program.
Somebody's saying thank you. Thank you. Who is that?
And this was Shirley Coursey.
Hi, Miss Coursey.
I just want to say,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Both of you, I just want to echo what Linda just said. I've been listening to this program. I think I picked it up in the middle of COVID. It's just wonderful, and it gets better and better every week. Now, I don't listen in on every topic, and I don't always agree with everything, but I love the opportunity that you give us ladies, and it's just wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Audrey,
Thank you.
Audrey wants to say something, Helen. Audrey G. You want to let her in? Audrey?
Go ahead, Audrey.
I am now unmuted. I'm just going to say quickly, because my battery's about to die. Last week, instead of visiting when Black women gathered, I visit my god brother who is convalescing in a nursing home. So he's complaining about he needs conversation, and I told him about when Black women gathered, and he says to me, very surprising, he says, "I hope she ain't doing it for free." So he said, I hope they can take a collection. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit more about how we can donate to when Black women gather.
I think I was just talking to a couple of the ladies the other day, and I'm going to end the recording, so because this is irrelevant. So thank you all for coming for the program, but I'm going to answer that question as soon as we stop recording. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.